Hey everyone, it's Jeff here. Tonight is another long night on our late night airwaves. I know many of you out there are lonely, searching for a little connection in the dark. And I'm here, as always, to share the stories you send me. Stories that sometimes I wish were just fiction. Tonight I received a very special email. No, actually, a series of frantic emails sent in a state of panic. The sender didn't leave a real name, just signed off as the survivor from Heaven, Ohio. Are you ready? Because this story made me double-check if my doors were locked. Let's begin. Heaven, Ohio, the survivor's email asterisk. Dear Jeff and listeners, I don't know if anyone else is still out there listening, but I need to tell this story. This might be my last message. This morning at 6:00 a.m., I was woken by an emergency alert on my phone. You know, that jarring sound that makes your heart leap. I reached for my phone, eyes still closed, and read the message. Seek shelter immediately and remain indoors. Await further instructions. I've lived here for almost 10 years. During that time, I've only received a few emergency alerts, and all of them were system tests. But this time, something felt different. I usually live a pretty comfortable life, not worrying much. Looking back, I should have prepared for the worst. I should have listened to those survivalists. Better safe than sorry, I told myself. I went downstairs, checked the front and back doors. Both were securely locked. I live alone in a 2-story house that I worked incredibly hard to buy. The downstairs windows all have sturdy iron bars, so I didn't need to check them further. After ensuring my safety, I returned to my bedroom and tried to make some calls. First, my boss, a woman who always answered the phone, even when asleep, but this time it went straight to voicemail. I left a message explaining the emergency alert. Next, my parents. They live 2 hours away by car and always wake up early, like roosters, but again, only voicemail. My heart started to pound faster. My phone vibrated. A message from John, my colleague. Did you get the alert? Do you know what's happening? I replied immediately. I don't know anything either. We'll let you know if I hear anything new. It was 7:30 a.m. I would usually be on my way to work by now. But I wasn't foolish enough to go outside with an alert like that. I decided to shower, eat breakfast, and then turn on the TV for the news. And then, oh my God, the emergency alert sound blared from the TV again, so loud I had to rush for the remote to turn it down. Every channel displayed the same message. Seek shelter immediately and remain indoors, awaiting further instructions. Do you know that feeling when everything suddenly becomes terrifyingly silent? No car sounds, no birds chirping, no neighbors chatting, no planes, nothing at all. That silence gave me goosebumps. I decided to look out through my bedroom window towards the street. I pulled back the curtain, and what I saw made me collapse to the floor immediately. Those creatures were standing in a circle in front of the house opposite, about 8 of them. They were horrifyingly tall and thin, their skin stretched as if about to tear, bones protruding as if ready to pierce through their flesh. Their faces had only a pair of deep-set, stark white eyes on skin as black as charcoal. They stood on 2 legs like humans, but they were definitely not human. Luckily, they didn't see me. I quickly closed the curtain, my heart pounding like a drum. I tried calling 911. An automated message played, seek shelter immediately and remain indoors, awaiting further instructions. It repeated until I hung up. Hours passed in despair. I called everyone in my contact list. No one answered. Even John stopped responding to my messages. I decided to go downstairs to check for food. The power was still on, the fridge was working, and the water was running. I filled the bathtub in case the water was cut off. At least that was 150 liters of drinking water. But curiosity killed the cat. I couldn't help but look again. This time, I peered carefully through the curtain. The monsters were no longer there, but the door of the house opposite was horribly scratched, a large hole in the middle. They had broken in. And then I saw it. One of them was staring at me from an upstairs window of the opposite house. Its deep-set eyes seemed to suck the soul out of me. I jumped back, terrified. They had seen me. Immediately, a terrible sound echoed from downstairs, the screeching of metal being scraped. They were trying to break through my iron-barred door. I quickly dragged a bookshelf to block the main door. The sun began to set and they didn't stop their assault. I couldn't fight them with my bare hands. Then I remembered a birthday gift from my father, a handgun I had never used. I ran upstairs and found it in its loaded box just as my father had taught me, and now I'm sitting in my room, the gun beside me. The scratching sounds still echo from downstairs. I don't know what to do, run, or fight. The terrifying scratching at the front door was relentless. I had to decide whether to find a hiding place inside the house or run outside while they were busy breaking through the door. Both options were terrible. Staying meant being trapped if they found me. Running meant not knowing how many were out there and how good they were at hunting. My house has an attic, accessible from the spare bedroom, requiring a ladder. Luckily, I still had the ladder I borrowed from my dad earlier in the year to paint the house and forgot to return. I had to gather food and water while climbing, but I didn't know how much time I had before they broke through the door. The stairs were right near the main door. If I didn't make it back in time, I was dead. I grabbed the gun and rushed downstairs. It was then I realized it wasn't just the front door. The metal scratching sound also came from the windows. Oh my God, I was so grateful I had installed those iron bars, but they couldn't hold out much longer. I ran into the kitchen, hastily grabbed food into a plastic bag, canned goods, bottled water, 4 bottles of various kinds. I estimated it would be enough for 2 weeks if I rationed. Water was more important. Without water, I wouldn't last a week. I tucked the gun into my waistband, grabbed the bag of supplies, and ran towards the stairs. Crash, a loud breaking sound from the kitchen window. One of them had broken through the iron bars. I didn't look back. I dashed up the stairs, ran straight into the spare bedroom, slammed the door shut, and locked it. Even though I knew this flimsy door wouldn't stop them, I dropped the bag, set up the ladder, climbed up, and pushed open the attic hatch. Heavy footsteps and something being smashed echoed from downstairs. I threw the bag of supplies into the attic with desperate strength. And then I realized I had forgotten my phone in the main bedroom. I knew I was stupid, but I still jumped down, opened the door, and intended to run to the next room. A dark figure stood at the bottom of the stairs, its stark white eyes staring at me. The same eyes I had seen through the window of the opposite house. It lunged up the stairs with incredible speed. I spun around, slamming the door shut. A thud resonated as it crashed into the door. I jumped onto the ladder, quickly climbed into the attic. Instinct told me to pull the ladder up, otherwise they would know I was here. I had just managed to replace the hatchboard when the sound of the door breaking open echoed. I held my breath in the dark. I heard the creature downstairs smashing everything in the room. If it caught me, I would surely be torn to shreds. Then others climbed up too. They didn't scream, didn't growl. Their silence was even more terrifying than screams. I lay still as death for several hours, not daring to move an inch. It wasn't until a faint light filtered through the small attic window, signaling dawn, that I finally breathed a sigh of relief. I survived the night. The sounds downstairs were still there but had weakened. I stealthily opened an energy bar and drank half a bottle of water. My throat was parched, but I didn't dare drink much. Then I fell asleep from exhaustion. When I woke up, my bladder felt like it was about to burst. You don't need the details, just know I handled it as quietly as possible. Downstairs was completely silent. I slowly opened the hatchboard, looked down. The spare bedroom was in shambles, but there was no sign of the creatures. I lowered the ladder, climbed down carefully. Gun held firmly in my hand. My phone. Strangely, it was neatly placed on my favorite jacket. As I reached for it, I saw a dark figure rise from the balcony outside. It had been waiting in ambush. Without thinking, I raised the gun and fired. The glass shattered and I fell backward. I don't know if I hit it, but I had to climb back into the attic immediately. When I looked again, the monster was gone. I quickly climbed into the attic, kicked down the ladder, replaced the board, and placed the heavy bag of supplies on top. They started banging on the board from below. I unlocked my phone. A new emergency alert. Seek nearest bomb shelter immediately. Incendiary bombs to be deployed. Estimated time, 3:00 p.m. My clock showed 12:30 p.m. I only had 2.5 hours. The nearest bomb shelter I knew was quite far. With so many monsters out there, walking was suicide. I needed a car, but my car keys were at the front door, probably buried in the rubble by now. Then I remembered Craig, my neighbor a few houses down. He used to boast about preparing for the apocalypse, even having a bunker under his house with enough food for 4 people for a year, even though he lived alone. At the time, I thought he was crazy. Now, he was my only chance of survival. I had to get out of the attic through the small window. Luckily, I could climb onto the first floor roof, not jump straight to the ground. I observed carefully, no monsters were in sight. I squeezed through the window, slowly lowered myself onto the lower roof. I crawled towards the back of the house, figuring there would be fewer of them there than on the street. Indeed, the backyard was empty. I heard them still banging on the attic door. I slid down the drain pipe, but the pipe detached from the wall. I crashed to the ground, the breath knocked out of my lungs. It hurt like hell, but I had no time to lie there. The noise must have attracted them. I stood up, ran towards the fence, and jumped over into the neighbor's yard. This house was also ravaged, windows shattered, doors torn open. I climbed over another fence into Craig's yard. Craig's house was also damaged, but the yard was empty. I had never been inside his house, so I didn't know where the bunker was. The back door was ripped off. I drew my gun and stepped inside. The house was pitch black and smelled of blood. I walked through the kitchen. The living room was in shambles. Then I saw a door torn open in the corner of the room. My intuition told me Craig had run down there, and that was the way to the bunker. I stepped down the dark stairs, my eyes gradually adjusting to the darkness. And then I saw them, bodies sprawled everywhere, blood splattered on the walls and ceiling. In the corner, Craig's body lay in a pool of blood, flesh torn to shreds. I vomited on the spot, my gun falling to the ground. The horrifying scene was indescribable. But then I saw it, a thick metal door slightly ajar near Craig. He was almost there, just a little further. I lunged towards the door, pushed it wide open. A sound behind me. I turned around, a monster was rushing down the stairs. Its eyes stared at me. I jumped inside, slammed the door shut, and turned the lock tightly. The monster slammed against the door, but the thick metal door held firm. I was safe, at least for now. I heard bombs falling about an hour after entering the bunker. The bunker shook violently. I thought it was about to collapse on my head. But after the final explosion, the walls and ceiling remained sturdy. If it weren't for Craig and his habit of preparing for the apocalypse, I would be dead. I didn't know him well, but I couldn't let his death be in vain. When I first came in, the monsters hammered on the door relentlessly, but luckily none got in before me. After the bombs fell, it was completely silent outside. This thick metal door had saved my life. After hours of listening for any movement, I collapsed onto the hard bed. Craig had only installed a single bed, not very comfortable, but compared to the attic floor, it was paradise. I finally fell asleep. That night I had nightmares about the monsters. I woke up in a cold sweat. Opening my eyes, I stared straight up at the ceiling. I tried to lift my head, but I couldn't. My body was stiff, as if gravity weighed 10 times heavier. And then I saw it. A dark figure stood in the corner of the room. The darkness obscured it. I couldn't clearly see what it was. The dark figure began to approach. The light from a nearby flashlight shone on its face. Its deep-set, stark white eyes stared at me. I wanted to scream, but I couldn't. The closer it came, the more I felt my body losing control. The creature was incredibly tall, its head almost touching the bunker ceiling. Up close, I could see it more clearly. Its skin was burnt black like charcoal, stretched so taut it seemed about to tear. Its enormous eyes were the only distinct features on its face. Its fingernails were long and sharp like knives. It leaned down, its face pressed close to mine. I felt as if my soul was being sucked out of my body. The sheer terror and evil power emanating from this creature forced me to squeeze my eyes shut, awaiting death. But nothing happened. I opened my eyes, the creature was gone. I tried to sit up and my body obeyed again. I trembled, looking around the corner of the room, no trace of it. Had it disappeared or had it never existed? Perhaps it was sleep paralysis. But it felt too real. Had the monsters affected my mind? I couldn't go back to sleep. I got up and took inventory of the bunker. Craig hadn't lied. Enough food for a family of 4 for a year. Not delicious, but enough to survive. A giant water tank filled with drinking water. Rechargeable flashlights that would last a lifetime. If I rationed, I could live here for at least a year. The bunker was about 4 by 4 meters, a single room containing everything necessary. From the south wall, the right corner held the bed, the opposite corner had a toilet and medicines. The far left corner had the large water tank, next to which were towering stacks of food containers. The other corner held clothes, which, fortunately, fit. Craig was incredibly meticulous. Every container was clearly labeled. After moving a few containers, I found one labeled, weapons. Inside were a handgun similar to the one I had dropped, a box of ammunition, and a razor-sharp 6-inch hunting knife. The knife wouldn't help much against monsters. I'd be torn to shreds before I got close, but it was better than nothing. I thought I could endure long-term solitude, but after just one day, I felt the monsters invading my mind. Humans are social creatures. I was afraid I would go mad here alone. Especially after last night's nightmare, or was it not a nightmare? Physically safe, but mentally crumbling. Staying here alone for too long was no different from death. If I couldn't sleep without seeing monsters, this bunker would be my tomb. It was hard to know what was happening outside. No phone signal since entering the bunker. Craig hadn't prepared a radio. Perhaps he didn't intend to contact anyone when the apocalypse came. Something urged me to leave the bunker. The nightmares and hallucinations made me believe something didn't want me here. I told myself I could always come back if needed, but I had to find a place where there were other people, a community. I decided to wait over a week. The days in the bunker dragged on like torture. Unable to distinguish day from night, I constantly felt like I was going crazy. The irrational fear grew, and the nightmares and hallucinations about monsters worsened, but always ended before they killed me. Something was wrong, and I wanted out. If monsters were still waiting outside, I would be torn to shreds immediately. But I had to believe the bombs had destroyed most of them. Anyway, I needed to know, and now I had a gun. I found a survival backpack Craig had prepared, a water filter, fire-starting tools, medicines, clothes, dried food, a flashlight, a compass, a multi-tool knife, and a tarp. I brought both the hunting knife and the gun with ammunition. The plan: safely exit the bunker, find transportation to the nearest community bomb shelter where other survivors might be. Once safe, I would return for more supplies. Backpack on my back, stomach full, gun in hand, I turned the doorknob. The lock clicked open and I pulled the door ajar. A cold draft blew in. The basement room was dark but empty. I thought it was still early morning, hence the darkness. My phone vibrated, startling me. Another emergency alert. Creatures have been eliminated. Survivors, please proceed to the nearest community bomb shelter. My heart lightened. The bombs had worked. I looked back at the bunker. I couldn't live there forever with the things I had seen. The only way was to follow the announcement. The nearest community bomb shelter was quite far. Walking wasn't ideal. I needed to find a car that was still working after the bombs. I stepped out of the bunker. A cold wind blew past. Craig's house above was probably no longer intact. But something was strange. The gun I had dropped at the bottom of the stairs was gone, and Craig's body was also gone. The pool of blood was still there, but the body had been moved somewhere. The monsters had used bait on me before. I decided to forget the old gun and rely on the new one if needed. I climbed the stairs. The basement was intact. Reaching the top, the door was gone. Morning light streamed in. I stepped out. The house was desolate. Only a skeleton remained. Every house in sight and the trees were destroyed. Nothing could have survived that bombing. Finding a working car was almost impossible. I'll have to walk. The community bomb shelter was at least an hour's walk away, maybe two. I had to believe there were no more monsters. The only other option was to return to the bunker and go insane. I left the rubble that was once Craig's house, heading towards the bomb shelter, hoping to meet other survivors. Humans? There were no birds chirping, no sounds at all. The town was like a cemetery. I wanted to whistle to calm my nerves, but I didn't dare. What if there were still monsters hiding? I kept the gun firmly in my hand, constantly alert, continuously scanning my surroundings. I prayed I wouldn't see any monsters peering from broken windows or around street corners. Their eyes were deeply etched in my mind. As I approached the shelter, I started to let my guard down. If there were still monsters, I surely would have encountered them by now. I tucked the gun into my waistband to rest my hand. I turned back to check behind me. A dark figure swiftly moved behind a fence a few hundred meters away. My heart seemed to stop. I stared at the spot where the dark figure disappeared. Maybe it was just my imagination, my mind playing tricks on me. But then it poked its head out from the fence. Its eyes locked onto mine. My mind was flooded with images of the monsters and Craig's mangled body. I screamed in terror, turned around, and ran towards the bomb shelter. I heard nothing behind me, but I didn't dare look back. I braced myself for the blow from behind that would end my life. The gun was gripped tightly in my hand again. I turned into the street where the bomb shelter was. A large yellow sign appeared, but the door was shut tight. No one was waiting outside. I could only pray someone inside would open it. Instinct told me to turn back. I turned around, still running. The road behind me was empty. I stopped, confused. It couldn't be my imagination. I turned back towards the shelter. The door was open, and a man stood waving at me. He shouted, "Run." I looked back again. An entire pack of monsters was charging, closing the distance rapidly. I avoided looking at their faces, turned and ran towards the door. The man stepped inside. I was afraid he would close the door before I could get in, but he held it open. The moment I stepped inside, he slammed the door shut, but a heavy thud from outside forced the door open again. A series of bangs echoed. I used my whole body to push the door, trying to close it. The monsters pushed with all their might. The door burst open. I tumbled down the stairs. When I looked up, I saw them tearing apart the man who had just saved me. All hope vanished. I stood up, ran towards the door separating the entrance from the main living area. I burst through the door, dozens of people huddled in the other corner of the room, some trembling on the floor, some screaming hysterically. I turned back and slammed the door shut. This door wasn't very sturdy. I dragged every movable object to barricade the door. A little girl's voice screamed, "Where's Daddy?" Her daddy must have been the man who just died before my eyes. I yelled, "Help me, they're coming in." But no one moved. A woman screamed, "You heard us, you'll go to hell?" I suddenly understood. The monsters wanted me to leave Craig's bunker. They wanted me to lead them to other survivors. They had been following me all along, but was the emergency alert also a trick by them, like what I saw in the bunker? Was it sleep paralysis or something far more terrifying? The answer would never come. After barricading the door, I retreated to the back of the room. Everyone was still screaming and cursing at me. I saw a door slightly open on the left and ran into it, hoping for another escape route. But it was just a small storage room. Loud bangs echoed. The furniture I had used to barricade the door was flung aside. I squeezed into the storage room. Screams and the sound of flesh being torn echoed from outside. This room had no other exit. They would soon find me. I didn't have enough ammunition to fight. This is probably my last update. My only comfort is that I'll save one bullet for myself. To anyone who receives an emergency alert like mine, I will pray for you. Good luck and goodbye. And that was the last email I received. I tried to contact him many times, no response. I searched for Heaven, Ohio, but found no information. I even called a few acquaintances in the media. No one knew anything. Maybe this story is just fiction. Maybe someone wanted to scare me, but the way they wrote it, the desperation in every line, I don't think anyone could fake that. You know, sometimes I wonder, what if one day our phones also get an alert like that? Seek shelter immediately and remain indoors. Would we obey, or would curiosity kill us? And those creatures, they didn't come from outside, they were always here, waiting. Waiting for something, perhaps a signal, perhaps an emergency alert. Thank you for listening tonight. This is Jeff from Chillify Radio. Stay safe, stay vigilant, and if your phone vibrates at 6:00 a.m., maybe don't check what it is. Hey everyone, Jeff's back. It's a cold night, isn't it? The kind of bone-chilling cold that makes you want to close your doors tight and never look outside. The next story also comes from Heaven, Ohio. Strange, isn't it? The same haunted town, but this time from a completely different perspective. A young police officer who had just moved there to work. He sent me his duty log, and what he discovered might make you never trust law enforcement again. Let's start from his first night. Heaven, Ohio. The police officer's diary asterisk. I don't know what your night shifts were like in Columbus, but night shifts here are pretty strange, Anderson said, taking a long drag from his cigarette. There was a no smoking sign in the meeting room, but the ashtray in the middle of the table showed no one cared. It's fine, I can handle weird, I assured him. Anderson scoffed. Everyone says that, kid. Listen, Columbus weird is one thing, Heaven weird is another. Trust me, they're completely different and it's best not to ask too many questions. His tone was a bit dismissive. He spoke as if I was fresh out of the academy, not a cop with 5 years of experience. This was my first shift in Heaven, but that didn't mean he had to talk to me like a child. Looking back, maybe I was wrong to leave Columbus for Heaven, Ohio, but I had my reasons. The Heaven Police Department was hiring, and I thought a fresh start in a quiet small town would be good for me. Just follow the rules and you'll be fine, Anderson said. It's that simple. All right, I replied. I actually read through the local ordinances. Not asterisk those rules, Anderson cut in. I mean, well, those are important too, but I'm talking about the night shift rules. Didn't anyone tell you? My confused expression answered for me. Anderson shook his head, looking tired. Geez, what kind of people are they hiring these days? All right, I'll explain. It's pretty simple. The thing is, the church on Aspen Park Road has a special agreement with the department, so it has its own set of rules. What rules? I asked. Like I said, simple, Anderson replied. Rule number 1, anything unusual around the Aspen Park Road area must be reported directly to Officer Dean Norris. And I emphasize *anything. Whatever you see, we don't touch it. Report it to Norris and chart it for Norris. Okay, noted, I said, but why? Because Norris knows how to deal with them. Rule number 2, never directly react or intervene with anything you see around Aspen Park Road. Whatever it is, whatever you think you see, no reaction, no intervention. Got that? He crossed his arms, waiting for my answer. Report to Officer Norris, I guess. Good, you report to him. Rule number 3, if you encounter anyone outside the Aspen Park area with a dove skull tattoo on their left arm, do not engage them, let them go. They belong to the church, as does everything else. Report to Norris. I had a few questions, but thought it best not to ask immediately. Rule number 4, do not enter the church without permission. And rule number 5, stay away from Aspen Park Road from 7:00 p.m. to 1:00 a.m. So no patrolling that area? I asked, skeptical. No. Why? Because it's part of the agreement. Listen, don't overthink it. Trust me, the rules are there for a reason. Don't ponder, don't ask questions. We do our patrol shift, any issues not related to the church rules, we handle normally. Trust me, most of the time you won't even have to think about the church. If we don't need to think about it, why make such a fuss about the church and these special rules? This whole thing sounded strange, but what could I do? Anderson spoke with the confident air of someone who knew the real reasons behind the rules. Perhaps it was best to just accept it and do my job. Besides, if he was right, and I rarely had to think about the church, then it probably wouldn't matter much, right? But I still felt uneasy. Why would a local church have its own set of rules? It made no sense. Maybe this was a joke. It had to be. A rookie prank, not very professional, but at least it made sense. I tried to listen to Anderson and not overthink it. If this wasn't a joke, there had to be a simple, clear reason. Surely. Unsurprisingly, during my first few weeks on the night shift, the church on Aspen Park Road was no issue. We drove past the area but rarely drove onto the road itself. I only actually saw the church a few times. It looked unremarkable. The Church of the Sacred Dove was a square, white brick building with a large, gabled chapel. I wouldn't have even noticed it existed if it weren't for those special rules. Night shifts in heaven were much quieter than in Columbus. A few calls each night, usually drunk disturbances and minor arguments. The most exciting thing in the first few weeks was a drunk guy flashing a gun at a bar when the bartender refused to serve him. That was it. I almost forgot the rules Anderson shared on my first night until I saw the first strange thing near Aspen Park Road. I was about to report it normally when he stopped me. It was a pretty quiet night by heaven's standards. Anderson stopped at a small shopping center, bought cigarettes, cheap coffee, and chatted with the owner. He usually visited this store every few nights. The owner would often tell him all the interesting things happening in the area, though there was rarely much. While he was chatting, I was outside smoking. Standing under the cool night sky, I took a deep breath and exhaled a harsh plume of smoke. There was an undeniable peace here under the stars. It was the kind of picturesque night I had dreamed of when I moved here. And standing under those stars, I heard faint screams in the distance. I paused, lowered my cigarette, and walked further into the parking lot. The screams were very faint but still audible, and I smelled something burning in the wind, not my cigarette. Something else. I wandered towards the edge of the parking lot, following the sound and the scent. The cigarette was discarded and stomped underfoot as I got closer to the road. There was something about that smell. It was faint but distinctive, both nauseating and sweet. A smell I could almost taste in my throat. It was familiar, but not in a good way. It brought back a vivid memory of an accident in Columbus where a drunk driver swerved off the road. The car had a fuel leak, and by the time someone called emergency services, the car had caught fire, turning it into a fiery coffin for the driver. I was one of the officers on the scene, and I remembered the stench that filled my nostrils as I stepped out of the patrol car. Burnt flesh, The smell in the wind tonight reminded me of that. Burnt human flesh. Joey, the call of my name pulled me from my thoughts. I looked back at Anderson. He stood beside the patrol car, a coffee cup in each hand. "Did you hear that?" I asked. Anderson was silent for a moment, then quietly opened the driver's side door. He didn't say anything to me, he just got in the car. I paused, then followed. I expected him to turn on the radio, but he just started the engine. "It's from the west," I said. "There's a smell too, hard to describe, not sure what it is." "Don't worry about it," Anderson said. My eyebrows furrowed. Why not?" I asked. "Church business. This kind of thing happens occasionally. Make a note of it and report it to Officer Norris." "We're not going to check it out," I asked. "I heard people screaming." "It's part of their service or something," Anderson said. "Don't ask me for details. I don't know, and trust me, it's better not to know. Leave a note for Norris, he'll talk to them." "What kind of church is that?" I asked. "What did I just say? Don't ask for details. I don't know, and trust me, it's better that way. Leave a note for Norris and he'll handle it." That answer didn't satisfy me at all. But what could I do? Argue? Anderson had turned on the radio to end the conversation as quickly as possible and drove in the opposite direction from Aspen Park Road. Half an hour later, he was chatting with me as if nothing had happened, as if the screaming and the burning smell were just hallucinations. It was strange, unsettling. Clearly, he wanted me to ignore it, but I couldn't. I didn't become a police officer to turn a blind eye. Maybe it was just some bizarre outdoor ceremony, but I knew I wouldn't be at peace until I was sure. When my shift ended, I went home and slept for a few hours. I woke up past noon. The memory of the screaming was faint, and the burning smell still haunted my mind. I sat up in bed. Anderson and I had noted in our end-of-shift report that we heard something from the Aspen Park Road area, but that was all, and it didn't feel like enough. Maybe I was overthinking it. Anderson wasn't a bad cop, but he was also a good person. If he wasn't worried, why should I be? The rules about the church were strange, but there had to be a logical explanation. I was probably just overthinking it. Maybe so, but I had to be sure. Maybe a walk around Aspen Park Road would put my mind at ease. No uniform, no badge, no gun, just me taking a walk. No one would complain about that, right? Just a walk on Aspen Park Road, nothing wrong with that. Yes, right, it'll be fine. I grabbed my jacket and wallet and headed out on foot. My apartment wasn't too far, about a half-hour walk, and I needed the exercise. The light snow from last night finally made it feel like winter as I walked down Aspen Park Road. In daylight, there was really nothing special about it. A normal road on the edge of a residential area. The church and its grounds occupied a long stretch of road, with dense woods on the other side. Further down was a newly built residential area, not more than 10 years old. The shopping center Anderson and I visited was just a few blocks away. As I wandered onto the church grounds, I couldn't help but feel like I was trespassing, though I didn't understand why I felt that way. The rule said not to enter the church uninvited. It said nothing about walking through the grounds. And indeed, I was just walking through the grounds. I wasn't harming anyone, not causing trouble, just walking through the grounds. Nothing wrong with that, right? This was a church, not Area 51. I wandered across the lawn behind the church, aimlessly, unsure what I was looking for. Proof of something, I guess. Maybe I would recognize it when I saw it, perhaps. As I crossed the field behind the church, my eyes were drawn to the woods behind it. I paused, staring intently, then realized something in the snow, an open space, looked like a large campfire pit in the middle. Interesting. I stopped, glanced at the church to make sure no one was watching, then walked towards the open space. My guess about the campfire pit was correct. Someone had burned something here, and judging by the charred wood fragments scattered over the snow, it had been used recently. The fire pit itself wasn't suspicious. Anderson had said fire was part of their service. Perhaps this was where they held it, but the memory of the screaming and the burning smell still lingered. I had seen religious fanatics before. This service was unlike any I had ever heard of. Maybe I shouldn't dwell on it, but I couldn't ignore it. Perhaps if it were just screams, I would have stopped. But that smell, it still bothered me. I had only smelled it once. But they say you never forget the smell of burning flesh. Maybe it was nothing. I wanted it to be nothing, but I had to be sure. I knelt beside the fire pit, digging in the snow and ash, still unsure what I was looking for. Perhaps I was looking for nothing. Nothing would be proof that this was all just nothing. My fingers brushed against something hard in the debris. I pulled it out. It was a small bone fragment bleached white by the fire. My stomach clenched as I examined it. Undeniably, it was bone, though hard to say exactly from what. It could be animal bone. That alone didn't confirm anything, but the reassurance didn't soothe the unease in my heart. I turned the bone fragment over and over, staring at it as if staring would help me know its origin. And then I heard a voice behind me. "A bit late for service, isn't it?" I froze and stood up, stuffing the bone into my pocket. A woman stood behind me. She was middle-aged, with narrow brown eyes and fiery red hair that shimmered like flames in the snow. She wore a white dress, no coat, despite the cold. I noticed a tattoo on her wrist, some kind of dove skull. I didn't look closely. "Oh, sorry," I stammered. "I was just taking a walk, curious because I saw the fire pit. I just moved to town. I was just looking for a place to meet people." None of what I said came out smoothly, and I forced a laugh to ease the awkwardness. The woman just continued to look at me, smiling serenely. "It's all right," she said. "I'm Harmony, nice to meet you." "I'm Joey," I replied. "No coat, you must be cold." Her smile didn't change. "I don't mind the weather," she said softly. "You're new to town, I don't recognize you." "Yes," I said. "Just moved here. I'm actually looking for a new church to join," I said, mostly to justify my poking around. I wondered if she believed me. "Oh, do you know anything about our church?" "I mean, I've driven past a few times," I said. "You work at the church." "You could call me the local pastor," she said. "I took over from my father about, 10 years ago, something like that." "Family business, huh?" I asked. Her unmoving smile seemed to widen slightly. "Perhaps," she said. "Oh, but he would probably hate what I've done with the place. He was an evangelist, the kind of person, you know, who used to preach about the coming apocalypse on the sign out front. I don't really believe in all that. My idea of God is a little different from his." "Oh, really?" I asked. "How different?" "He believed in the church as a stick, believe or burn in hellfire. I see it as a hook, bringing the community together, leading them in the same direction towards God." "That sounds nice," I said. "I like to think so. I believe in the power of community. Whether you believe in God or not, you can believe in that. You can place your faith in that, which is why we have the bonfire." "So, it's more like a community gathering than a service?" I asked. "We have traditional services, but many nights I invite community members, and we gather around the fire, quite casually. You're welcome to join if you like, you might even make new friends." I had to admit, the invitation was tempting, but the unease in my heart remained, and something about this woman felt off. I couldn't pinpoint exactly what. Perhaps it was her vacant smile or her voice, perhaps something else. "We'll see," I said. "I work night shifts, but if I get a chance, I'd love to." "Then I hope to see you again," Harmony said. "In the meantime, feel free to drop by if you need anything or have questions. My door is always open." "Yes, I'll definitely take you up on that," I assured her. "Though I should get going, see you around." "See you around," she replied serenely, watching me leave. I felt her gaze follow me as I turned back towards the road. When I looked back, she was still standing there, by the campfire ashes, watching me. When I returned to my night shift, I had to ask Anderson about the Church of the Sacred Dove. I caught him in the gym about half an hour before our shift. He was on the treadmill. I jumped on the machine next to him. He nodded a greeting. "How's it going, kid?" he asked. No complaints," I said, half lying. "You?" "Same as always, you know." I nodded, and we chatted for a while, small talk, while I prepared my real question. "So, what exactly is that church on Aspen Park Road all about? I've heard of weird churches before, but they seem different." "Trust me, kid," Anderson said. "The less said about them, the better." "Yeah, you keep saying that, but I'd ask less if I knew why I shouldn't talk about them." Anderson sighed, slowing the treadmill slightly. "It's a long, ugly story, kid," he said, admitting. "Even I probably don't know all the details. It used to be run by an old fanatic, the typical fire and brimstone preacher, much less interesting back then." But after he died a few years ago, his daughter took over, and she's, well, what's the word? New Age, occult, animal sacrifices. Animal sacrifices, I repeated. It seems they have an agreement with the county. Listen, our job isn't to get involved in politics. Our job is just to keep the peace. Whatever they're doing out there, it's all legal with the county and the department, so it's best to keep our distance. People have gotten into trouble for poking around too much. I don't want to see you end up like them. Understood, I said softly. Anderson stopped the treadmill and took a big gulp from his water bottle. I'm not trying to scare you, Joey. I'm really not, but it's better if you don't think about the church. Leave a note for Norris and you'll be much happier. I think he was trying to be reassuring, but his insistence only made me more uneasy. While Anderson went to shower and change, I got off the treadmill and switched to the exercise bike. I thought about the bone fragment I found earlier. If they used bonfires for animal sacrifices, the bone probably came from there. But there was still an uncertainty, gnawing at me, and sitting on the exercise bike, I knew it wouldn't go away until I found out the truth. The night shifts with Anderson were pretty quiet. We broke up a few noisy parties, handled a couple of domestic disturbances, and arrested a few drunk guys at bars. That was it. Nothing happened around Aspen Park Road. If anything, things were especially quiet there for a few nights. About 3 days after I found the bone fragment, I saw a man in a white robe running in the street. We were driving towards him when I noticed him. He couldn't be ignored. Even in the dark, our headlights illuminated him, his white robe like a Christmas tree. We were only about a block from Aspen Park Road. I remember it was well past midnight. Anderson, I said quickly, pointing at the man as if he wasn't right in front of us. I saw Anderson staring at the man in the street. I expected him to slow down, turn on his lights, and check. He didn't. He just quietly watched and swerved slightly to avoid hitting him. The man seemed to see us and spread his arms, running towards the car. I saw genuine terror on his face. The wide-eyed panic that could lead to hysteria. Anderson still didn't stop. He just kept driving, circling around the man who was desperately trying to catch up. "What the hell are you doing?" I asked. "Rules are rules, Joey," he said nonchalantly. "We just keep going." "What the hell?" I yelled before trying to unlock the door to get out. We weren't going very fast. I could jump out without getting hurt. The moment I put my hand on the door, Anderson grabbed my wrist and slammed on the brakes. "Don't," he warned. His eyes stared into mine more fiercely than I had ever seen. The man in the white robe had caught up to the car. I heard him banging on my window. I heard him screaming, "Help! Help me, please, 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 please." Tears streamed down his cheeks as he tried to pull the door open, but Anderson had locked it. "We don't intervene with things we see out there, Joey," he said, his voice terrifyingly cold. "We leave them alone and make a note for Officer Norris." I looked at him in complete disbelief. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "God, Anderson, there's a man banging on the window," I yelled. "We don't intervene." I tried to open the door again, but he lunged at me, pinning me to the seat. "This is for your own good, kid," he growled while I struggled to push him off. Outside the car, the man in the white robe was looking at us, his eyes wide with terror. I saw 5 new shadowy figures behind him emerge from the darkness at the edge of the road. All wore black robes with hoods concealing their faces. The man in white didn't seem to notice them yet. He was still focused on Anderson and me struggling in the car. Anderson glanced at the man. I knew he saw the shadowy figures approaching, but he did nothing. He just held me tight, rendering me helpless to stop what was about to happen. The man in white finally seemed to realize the newcomers behind him. His reaction was pure terror. "No," he whispered. "No, no, please, please." He started to run, but the black-robed figures quickly closed the distance. I squirmed under Anderson, trying to reach for the stun gun in my waistband. The moment he realized what I was doing, he grabbed my wrist. "Don't," he said again. "Just let it go, Joey, let it go." All I could do was watch as the black-robed figures dragged the screaming man away. He struggled, he kicked, he cried, but he couldn't escape. They took him, and I could do nothing to stop them. I punched Anderson's shoulder like a tantruming child, but he didn't budge, holding me firmly against the seat. "The rules exist for a reason," he said, his voice deep and heavy. "I understand your nature isn't to look the other way. I understand, but you can't get involved in the church's business. Do you understand?" That man was running, I tried to argue. And we'll leave a note for Norris. Who is Norris? I yelled. Who is Officer Norris? Because in the few weeks I've been here, I've never seen or heard anyone else mention a Dean Norris, and yet he's the one we send to handle these calls. A guy who, as far as I know, doesn't exist. That man was running scared. Anderson, we have to do something. I tried again to push Anderson off, but he still didn't move. Don't, he said. Joey, don't. Get off me, I yelled before finally headbutting him and pushing him back a few inches. I flung open the patrol car door and stumbled out. The man in white couldn't have gone far. I just needed to catch up and grab him. Suddenly, every muscle in my body seized up as I experienced what I can only describe as an evil combination of full-body cramps and being hit with a baseball bat. I had been tased before in training in Columbus. I always hoped I wouldn't have to experience it again, but I guess Anderson had other ideas. I crashed to the ground, twitching. Anderson stood over me, watching me writhe on the ground. Don't be a hero, Joey, he said. Heroes don't last long in this town, and the rest of us survive by following the rules. This is her town. It's been her town for the past 10 years, so please, stop. I rolled onto my back, gasping for breath. I saw Anderson looking down at me. I saw he had drawn his gun, not pointing it at me, but it was there. A silent warning against trying anything else. After a moment, he extended his hand. Get up, he said calmly. Let's go get some coffee and forget about this, okay? Let's leave it behind. Though his voice was sincere, I think he knew that truly leaving it behind wasn't an option. I saw it in his eyes, but beneath the hardened resolve, I also saw hope. Hope that I would understand and let it go. I sighed tiredly before reaching for his hand and letting him pull me to my feet. Good, he said. Now I'll get you some coffee. Come on, get in the car. He gestured to the passenger door, which was open, and I trudged in. My whole body still ached, but I couldn't do anything else. Anderson closed the door behind me before walking around to the driver's seat. His mistake was taking his eyes off me. I'm not proud of what I did next. But if I did things Anderson's way, we would have left that man to his fate. Maybe he could do it, but I couldn't. I grabbed the pepper spray the moment he closed his door. And as he got into the car next to me, I emptied the entire can into his face. Anderson screamed, thrashing violently, and tumbled backward out of the car. I heard him yelling my name, but I wasted no more time. I flung open the door and stumbled out. Joey, I heard Anderson yell, but I was already running, chasing the robed figures towards Aspen Park Road and the church. It wasn't long before I heard music, frenzied drumming and chaotic chanting. I saw firelight ahead, around the same area I had visited the day before. And this time, I saw shadowy figures dancing in the firelight, spinning around a massive, towering bonfire. I stopped before moving into the nearby woods, letting the trees and darkness conceal me from the gathering as I got closer. I counted about 20 to 30 people around the fire. About 5 of them were dancing. All wore ceremonial robes, spinning so tightly around them that their bare feet were exposed in the cold weather. Each dancer wore an elaborate dove skull mask on their head. Their dance was unlike anything I had ever seen. Their arms swayed in rhythmic circular motions. They barely moved like humans. At the entrance to the area, observing the dancers, was a solitary woman in the familiar white dress. Like the dancers, she also wore an elaborate dove skull mask and stood barefoot in the snow. Harmony, it had to be her. Gathered beside her, I saw 2 groups of black-robed figures, each holding a strange person dressed in white. One of them was the man I saw on the road. The other was someone new, a second man who looked just as terrified as the first. A part of me wanted to rush into the area, gun drawn, to break up whatever this bizarre ritual was, but something kept me rooted, watching in awe. The dance reached a frantic crescendo, and finally all the dancers collapsed into the snow, prostrating themselves before the flames. Only then did Harmony speak. We offer these chosen ones in this winter hour. We offer them to you, O Great One, O Divine One, you with scythe claws and grinding beak, you with endless eyes and crushing teeth. We offer this humble feast, O Most Divine One. She raised her hand, and as if on cue, the 2 captives were dragged towards the flames. I saw them struggle, I heard them scream. The smell of burning flesh still lingered in my memory, along with the vivid image of the bone fragment I found in the ashes of this very bonfire. In that moment, I knew every fear lurking in my mind about this place was justified and true. They were about to burn those people alive. Sacrifice them too. To what? God. No, not God, something else. I reached for my gun. The people in the area seemed unarmed. I could stop this. I could end it. I needed to end it. I fired 3 shots into the sky as I burst out of the trees. Harmony calmly turned to look at me. Whatever the hell this is, it ends now, I snapped. Let those people go. The shadowy figures didn't react. They held their struggling victims tightly. Ah, Joey, isn't it? Harmony asked, her voice still eerily calm. It seems you've already attended one of our gatherings. I don't know what you think you're doing, but I'm putting a stop to it, I yelled. Let them go now, I growled, pointing the gun at Harmony's chest. She only chuckled. It's sweet that you think you have power over me, she said, but all right, I'll humor you. She clapped her hands twice. Release them. At her command, the 2 captives were released and fled. There, see, I can be reasonable, she said softly. He is not. What are you talking about? I asked. You really don't know what we're doing here, do you? Harmony asked. I'm not surprised. You're a local police officer, aren't you? I guess they didn't fully explain our agreement with them. Just because you have them in your pocket doesn't mean you have me, I said. In my pocket, she laughed. You're really narrow-minded. I guess you think this is crazy or some kind of conspiracy, right? But it's all much simpler than that. Then explain it, I challenged. This land is consecrated. We stand in God's temple and we stand here to pray. It's just that our prayers are a little more direct than most. She looked at me before noticing the confusion on my face. My father didn't understand either, she said. He believed God wanted loyalty, prayer, service. And yes, he wants these things, but above all, he wants food. He wants to be fed, and so we feed him. You're crazy. You're completely insane, I said, keeping the gun pointed at her. Lie down, hands behind your head. You're going to arrest me? She asked, chuckling. You think he will allow you to lay a hand on me? Let's see, I said, keeping the gun pointed at her as I moved closer. She didn't resist. She just looked at me with a hint of amusement as I approached. I placed my hand on her shoulder, trying to force her to kneel. And as I did, the area lit up. Flames erupted from the bonfire. Not a flare-up of the fire, but something else. The bonfire seemed to grow, seemed to change. For a moment, I was certain there was something asterisk in the fire, something looking at me. I couldn't clearly see exactly what. I could make out details, shapes, wings, eyes, but not much more. My ears began to ring. The surrounding light was blinding. I couldn't see, I couldn't focus. I don't remember falling into the snow. But I must have, because Harmony was standing over me, smiling down through her bird mask. And now you see, she said before looking back towards the black-robed figures. Throw this one into the fire, for he has released the intended sacrifices. He will replace them. I weakly tried to get up, but I felt hands grab me, forcing me to stand. My gun was snatched from my hand and taken away. I stared at the fire, countless eyes staring back at me from the flames. No, was the only word I could utter. Wait, wait, a new voice echoed throughout the area. Harmony turned to look. Anderson stood at the edge of the woods, holding up his hands in a futile attempt to prevent my impending execution. Don't do it, Anderson gasped. Don't do it. He caused us to lose our sacrifices tonight. Why spare him? Harmony asked. Please, ma'am, it's his fault for getting involved. I should have stopped him, made him realize. Please, it's my fault. So we should take you instead of him? She purred. How noble. Give me one reason why I shouldn't throw both of you into the fire and be done with it. He's seen what you do here, Anderson said. He knows what's in the fire. He's more useful alive. Like I once was, like Norris once was. Harmony was silent for a moment. Oh, she asked before a dark chuckle escaped her. And so we've come full circle, haven't we, Jeremiah Anderson? I saw Anderson hesitate for a moment before giving a small nod. Yes, that's right. Harmony seemed to ponder for a moment before nodding. All right, if you insist, then you will go into the fire. Anderson didn't reply, but his eyes locked onto mine, a meaning in the final look he gave me. More meaning than simple words could convey rebuke, fear, hope, and a plea. With that final look between us, I understood Anderson more than I had in weeks of working together. I said nothing to him. No nod, I just looked back at him, knowing, unsure what would happen next. Thank you, Anderson said. I wasn't sure if he was talking to me or Harmony. Then he turned and stared at the fire. Taking a final breath, I watched him begin to walk towards the flames. His steps faltered, fear permeated every movement. But he didn't stop, he didn't hesitate. He offered himself to the fire, and as it consumed him, as the flames melted flesh from bone, filling my nostrils with the smell of burning flesh. As his screams dissolved into the night, I watched. About a year later, they sent me a rookie to work the night shift, a kid from Toledo. He'd been a cop for 3 years and thought a fresh start in a quiet small town would be good for him. When I first met him in the break room before our shift, I sized him up, then lit a cigarette. I don't know what your night shifts were like in Toledo, but night shifts here are pretty strange, I said. It's fine, I can handle weird, he assured me. For some reason, that made me laugh. Everyone says that, kid. Listen, Toledo weird is one thing, heaven weird is another. Trust me, they're completely different. And it's best not to ask too many questions. Listen, just follow the rules and you'll be fine. It's that simple. Rules? He asked. Had no one told him about the rules, I sighed and shook my head. Geez, what kind of people are they hiring these days? I asked. All right, I'll explain. It's pretty simple. The thing is, the church on Aspen Park Road has a special agreement with the department, so it has its own set of rules. Okay, like what? He asked. Like I said, simple, I replied. Rule number 1, anything unusual around the Aspen Park Road area must be reported directly to Officer Jeremiah Anderson. And I emphasize *anything. Whatever you see, we don't touch it. Report it to Anderson and chart it for Anderson. Officer Anderson, I haven't met him, the kid said. Don't worry, chances are you never will, I said. But he knows how to deal with the people at the church. So whatever you see out there, whatever you hear, report it to Anderson. Understood? The rookie nodded, but I knew he didn't understand. He thought he understood just as I once thought I did. But he didn't understand, he couldn't. Not until he saw it with his own eyes. I understood, as Anderson once understood, you can't fight a god. All you can do is abide by its laws. I looked at the kid sitting opposite me, eager and innocent. He was exactly like me a year ago, full of zeal, wanting to do the right thing, wanting to make a difference. He would learn. One way or another, he would learn. Rule number 2, I continued, my voice flat, just as Anderson's had been with me, never directly react or intervene with anything you see around Aspen Park Road. Whatever it is, no reaction, no intervention. Note it and report it to Anderson. The kid nodded, but I saw the skepticism on his face. Good, be skeptical. It will make the lesson more painful, but also more effective. Rule number 3. If you encounter anyone outside the Aspen Park area with a dove skull tattoo on their left arm, do not engage them, let them go. They belong to the church. But, the kid began. No buts, I cut in. Rule number 4, do not enter the church without permission. Rule number 5, stay away from Aspen Park Road from 7:00 p.m. to 1:00 a.m. Why? He asked. I looked him straight in the eyes. For a moment, I wanted to tell him the truth, to warn him, to tell him to run from heaven while he still could. But I knew he wouldn't listen, just as I hadn't listened. And besides, he needed to be fed. He always needed to be fed. Because that's the agreement, I said. And trust me, the rules exist for a reason. It's best not to overthink it. I saw he wanted to ask more. I saw the burning curiosity in his eyes. Good. Let him be curious, let him investigate, let him find out. And when he does, when he sees what's in the fire, when he understands the truth, maybe he'll be lucky. Maybe someone will sacrifice for him, as Anderson did for me, or maybe he'll walk into the fire himself. Either way, he will be fed. Any more questions? I asked. The kid shook his head, but I knew the questions would come. They always do. But, I said, then let's go, it's going to be a long night. We walked out of the break room into the darkness. I led the way to the patrol car. The kid followed. As we drove past Aspen Park Road, I saw firelight flickering through the trees. Another gathering, another feast. The kid looked in the direction of the light but said nothing. Not yet, but I knew someday he would ask, and then the cycle would continue. It always continues. Heaven, Ohio, is not heaven. It's hell, very cleverly disguised. And we're not police officers anymore. We're shepherds leading the sheep to the slaughter. And the worst part, we know it. We live with it because we've seen what happens to those who try to fight back. I think about Anderson every night, think about his face as he walked into the fire. It wasn't fear I remember most, but acceptance. He knew this was the only way to keep the wheel turning, to keep him satisfied. "Hey," the kid said, "do you hear that?" Screams echoed from a distance. The familiar smell filled the car through the open window. Burnt flesh. "No," I said, "you don't hear anything. You don't hear anything at all." The kid was silent, but I saw him looking towards the firelight, saw him wondering. "Good. Wonder, kid. Wonder until you can't take it anymore. And then, welcome to the truth. Welcome to heaven." And that's the end. Or is it the beginning? In heaven, Ohio, it's hard to tell the difference. You know the scariest thing about this story? It's not the monster in the fire, it's not the sacrifices, it's not even the police complicity. The scariest thing is that it all has a perfectly logical reason. Think about it. A God lives in your town, a real God that can be seen, that can interact, and it's hungry, always hungry. You have two choices: fight it and die, or feed it. Feed it with strangers, wanderers, people no one will remember. And in return, the town is safe. Most people live in peace. Is that evil, or is it just survival? I don't have the answers for you. I only have the story. And this story, it's still happening right now. Somewhere in heaven, Ohio, a young police officer is hearing about the rules for the first time, and the cycle continues. Thank you for staying with me tonight, for listening to the stories from the dark. I'm Jeff, and this is Chillify Radio. Remember, if you see something strange in your town, maybe don't investigate. Maybe just follow the rules. Some rules exist for a reason, even if that reason is unimaginably horrible. Hey everyone, Jeff here. Tonight I have a different story, not about monsters or ghosts, but about worlds, realities, and a man trapped between the layers of the universe. He sent me this letter from, well, I actually don't know where. The return address changed every time I looked. Sometimes it was New York, sometimes Tokyo, sometimes places I'd never heard of. Perhaps after listening, you'll understand why he's sending it to anyone, everyone in this reality. The man who dies repeatedly. Each time I die, I enter a different reality, and each new world is more horrifying than the last. This may be the only reality you've ever known, but I remember a brighter life. I grew up in a version of the 2000s where there were no wars. Global famine was an ancient nightmare, a scary fairy tale with fictional proportions. In my 2000s, we lived in an age of privilege. Our technology far surpassed anything in this reality. We had solved so many of the world's problems. Life was good, life was easy. But all that changed for me in 2011. I was cycling on a peaceful country road. A distracted driver struck me. That collision ripped me from my beautiful life forever. I was pulled from my body. I screamed into the metaphysical void as my soul floated up from my mangled corpse on the asphalt. In 2011, at 18 years old, I died. I had no doubt. Just as I had no doubt that colossal, rotting, curled fingers reached out from the clouds to grasp my spiritual form. Only to be denied the pleasure, as my untethered soul abruptly fell back to earth. I entered the void, absolute darkness. And then, "Are you all right?" a man cried out. My eyelids were unusually heavy and unwilling to open, and when I finally managed to open my eyes, I found my soul had returned to my physical body, entangled with my bicycle on the road. My once crushed body was now in near-perfect condition. "Can you move?" the voice continued. I don't see you. I'm sorry, but I died," I whispered hoarsely. The man gulped. "No, you'll be fine. I've already called an ambulance." I felt disjointed, yet not a single scratch on me. It was a spiritual disjointedness. A feeling of not belonging. A feeling that I had accidentally cheated those terrifying fingers that were preparing to pluck me from the sky. When the ambulance arrived, the driver, tormented by guilt, followed us to the hospital. He and I seemed equally shocked not only by my survival, but also by my unharmed state. "It was a head-on collision," he yelled. "The kid flew into the air, you saw the wreckage, the bike was nothing. Check again, you're missing something, a head injury or something." One of the doctors tried to calm him. "Mr. Dell, I understand your concern, but Phi is unharmed. This is a good thing, no one was hurt." Meanwhile, I observed the hospital environment from my bed with that sense of disconnect. Everything was different. The hospital machines looked less advanced, people's clothes looked outdated. But it wasn't until I returned home that the horror truly unfolded. As I stepped into the unfamiliar environment, I realized I hadn't come home. "I'll make spaghetti for dinner, okay?" my mother said. I nodded slowly. mesmerized by the TV in the kitchen. It was showing horrific scenes of destruction and misery in the Middle East. I thought it was a movie until I saw the news logo at the bottom, and that's when I understood what I was seeing. War. Something I had only ever seen in history books. Something the world had mostly stamped out with the unification of religions and nations in the 1800s. An event that I later learned had never happened. "Switch to something more cheerful, Dave," my mother said, noticing my distress. I immediately ran to my room to research the catastrophe that had elicited such an indifferent response from my parents. How could they be unaffected by what I assumed was the first war in over a century? The surprises didn't stop there. On the desk in my bedroom was a mobile phone that looked like something from the 80s, my 80s version. And the internet was far more rudimentary than I remembered. My palms began to sweat, and it got worse as I read about the countless wars that had ravaged the world for a century. Fortunately, some progress had been made in resolving conflicts, and widespread famine had been eradicated by the late 90s. But the timeline was still wrong, terribly wrong. And this wasn't even your reality. It took me years to adapt to a world with so many historical variations. I kept the truth secret from my family and friends. I was afraid of being institutionalized if I revealed what had happened to me, and perhaps I would have agreed. I think I might have eventually dismissed it as a mental health issue, if not for the second death. On December 11th, 2022, I died in a plane crash over the English Channel. In the depths of the ocean, my invisible soul sank with the plane wreckage and the countless ghastly specters of the dead passengers. And from the dark depths of that underwater graveyard, I saw those familiar fingers reaching for me, as if welcoming an old friend. I feared what that dreadful giant held for the soul that had cheated it, that had defrauded it. And those terrible appendages seemed angrier this time. But then again, my soul was ripped away. I surfaced through the water and reunited with my body on the sea. I found myself floating on the sea, but no plane wreckage in sight, only the cliffs of Dover in the distance. And so I swam towards them. But the world I found when I came ashore was even more terrifyingly different from the world I had left years before. It was your asterisk world. Everything is corrupted here. Meaningless death and destruction. A world on the brink of self-inflicted collapse, and no one cares. People here are hollow shells. They frighten me. I used to fear the shadowy hands that craved and still crave my soul in all universes. Now, I only fear the deeper level of horror that the next reality will bring. Do you know? I've lived in this world of yours for 3 years now. 3 years of observing cruelty, indifference, degradation. And I can't help but wonder, if I die again, what awaits me? What world could be worse than this? Perhaps a world where war isn't just daily news, but the only reality. Where famine isn't eradicated, but celebrated. Where humans aren't just hollow shells, but true monsters. Or perhaps next time, the fingers won't miss. Sometimes I think about letting them take me, letting them drag me to wherever they intend to take souls. Because whatever awaits in their cold embrace, could it be worse than sliding through the layers of reality, each darker than the last? I'm 26 years old, I've died twice, and I know I will die again. The question isn't when. The question is, where will I wake up next? Have you ever looked around and felt something was wrong? Like this world isn't quite right, like you remember things being better? Perhaps the writer of this letter is right. Perhaps we are living in a worse version of reality. A version where war is normal, where suffering is accepted, where people have forgotten how to care. Or perhaps this is always how things were, and memories of a better world are just dreams, illusions, wishes. I look back at the letter, the return address has changed again. Now it says, impossible. It says the letter was sent from a place that doesn't exist, a city I'm sure isn't on any map. But perhaps it does exist, just not in this world. It's midnight, my friends, the time when the line between worlds is thinnest. If you listen carefully, perhaps you can hear them, the other realities, other versions of yourselves, living better or worse lives. And somewhere in one of those worlds, perhaps there's a version of me who isn't hosting this late-night show. A version who has never heard the stories that make me question the nature of reality. I envy him, but this is our world, the only one we have. And no matter how bad it is, at least we are still here, still alive, still existing, at least for now. Thank you for listening. I'm Jeff. And if you wake up tomorrow in a different world, remember us, remember this world. That sound, the sound of a misfired bullet. The sound of life extended for another year. Tonight's next story comes from a man living near Bear Creek National Park. Don't look for it. That's a fake name, so no one tries to find the evil lurking there. Safer that way. He sent me this story along with a bullet and a note. It's been 5 years, and I'm still waiting. Listen to the story of the stairs that lead nowhere and the girl who climbed them. The stairs to nowhere. I exhaled sharply as I lowered the revolver from my temple. Today marks 5 years since Nadia disappeared. It's hard to believe it's been so long. We had so much time, so much life to live together. But it all stopped abruptly half a decade ago, on the day we found those stairs. Without her, I have no purpose. No family, no friends, no one to keep me tethered to this world. So, every year on the night Nadia went missing, I stumble to the spot where it happened, with my 6-shooter, half submerged in a bottle of vodka, and let the forest decide whether I live another year or am reunited with her. Wherever she may be. Now that it's been determined I have at least one more rotation around the sun, I'll tell you how I got here. I need to get it out while I still have the courage. For some reason, I'll wake up tomorrow afternoon with a terrible headache and no memory of tonight. Better to tell it while I still can. I've lived on the outskirts of Bear Creek National Park my whole life. Don't look for it. That's a fake name, so no one tries to find the evil lurking here. Safer that way. I used to live in a cabin with my dad. I miss him terribly. He passed away 8 years ago, leaving me all alone. Cancer is a son of a bitch. That was before Nadia and I dated. It's funny how things played out. I actually met her at a coffee shop on my way back from my dad's grave. When she approached, asking if the seat opposite me was taken, I was smitten immediately. Her deep blue eyes sparkled like the ocean. Her long brown hair cascaded down her shoulders, and that smile. When Nadia smiled, time seemed to stop just for a moment, so the whole world could gaze upon its breathtaking beauty. We were inseparable after that day. A month later, we were dating. 9 more months, we were living together in my cabin. And a year later, we were planning to get married, had chosen the date and venue and everything. I was on cloud 9, but it was all snatched away in an instant. If only I had never taken her out there. The first time I encountered the stairs was when I was 7. My dad always warned me never to climb them. That wasn't an issue for me. The stairs exuded an evil presence, as if anyone who dared to step upon them would be swallowed whole by fear itself. I remember it as if it were yesterday. I was playing in the woods near the cabin when I saw it. A black, spiral metal staircase about 1 story high. It led nowhere. It just ended. All the stairs are like that. They vary in size, shape, and style. But the one thing they all have in common is that they lead nowhere. And they are never in the same place twice. They just appear. No one knows how or why, and frankly, we don't want to know. Most of us anyway. Nadia wanted to know, and that knowledge cost her everything. Come on, Jason, just a little longer. I want to watch the sunset, Nadia whined, protesting my suggestion to turn back. Honey, I know you want to, but we didn't bring a flashlight and my phone battery is dead. I don't want to run into a tree every few steps on the way back. Oh, all right, you win. I'll go back this time, but promise me we'll come back tomorrow, okay? She pleaded, pouting and looking at me with her best puppy dog eyes. I'd be lying if I said they didn't work. All right, I'll take you out here tomorrow. But only if you... I trailed off, mesmerized by the sight before me. Nadia's eyebrows furrowed in confusion as she followed my gaze, then her jaw dropped. Right in front of us was a set of sleek, cedar wood stairs. I felt a sinking feeling in my stomach the moment I saw it. It looked so out of place, like a mouse in a fish tank. What the hell is that? Nadia mumbled, her eyes still fixed on it. It's nothing, I'll tell you later, I said, grabbing her hand and pulling her in the opposite direction. Jason, let go. Why are you making such a fuss about this? Tell me what's going on, or I'm not moving another inch, Nadia protested, crossing her arms defiantly. I sighed, no point in hiding it anymore, she would find out eventually. Okay, listen, this is going to sound a little crazy, but bear with me. Ever since I've lived here, ever since anyone has lived here, actually, people have found random staircases in the woods. They appear and disappear constantly, and you'll never find one in the same spot twice. The stairs are bad news. Something terrible happens if you climb to the top, but no one knows exactly what. All I know for sure is we need to stay away from them. Nadia rolled her eyes. Come on, do you really expect me to believe that? Bad news? Are you psychic or something? Oh, the scary stairs. She waved her hand dismissively. Nadia, do I look like I'm joking? I know it sounds crazy, but I never lie to you. She gently took my hand in hers and looked straight into my eyes. Honey, I'm not accusing you of that. It is weird, but if it really bothers you that much, I won't push it. Okay, thank you. Now let's go home, I'm starving. Once we were out of sight of that damn thing, I could feel the tension start to dissipate like a curtain being lifted. I slept that night with a full belly of pierogies and not a thought in my head other than the petite girl curled in my arms. The stares had vanished from my brain, as they always did. Until the next day, we both had the day off, and before I knew it, Nadia was pulling me back down the path from yesterday to watch the sunset. Butterflies fluttered in my stomach as we approached the spot where we had seen the stairs the day before. Nadia noticed first, though. Hey, isn't this where you dragged me yesterday? The stairs, they're gone. See, I told you they were bad news. Do you believe me now? I never said I didn't believe you, just that it's a strange phenomenon. You know, like seeing a unicorn. You don't actually expect to find it, or in this case, not find it. It's a lot to process. I didn't know what to say. She had nailed the analysis, except stairs aren't unicorns, they're something far more sinister. We continued in silence until we finally reached the overlook. That evening will always stand out in my mind. The sky was an artist's canvas, a beautiful blend of purples, pinks, and oranges swirling behind delicate, wispy clouds. I had never seen anything so picturesque. We stayed there long after the sun had set, gazing up at the sea of stars illuminating the night sky. Thank you for keeping your promise. Today was perfect, Nadia yawned, eyes drooping, her head resting on my shoulder. Every day with you is perfect. Thank you for dragging me out of the house. It was truly wonderful. I love you so much. You're welcome, you big dummy, Nadia giggled, her eyes barely open. I love you too. All right, sweetie, time to go home. You're barely awake. Just a little longer, I'm so comfortable, she protested, burying her face in my chest. My heart was full in that moment. What had I done to deserve such an amazing girl? All right, up you go, I said, lifting my sleepy girlfriend into my arms. If your legs aren't going to move, I have no choice but to carry you. Oh no, how terrible, she joked, wrapping her arms around my neck. Nothing, just be quiet and let me. I froze mid-step. I swallowed hard as sweat began to bead on my forehead. In the darkness among the trees, my flashlight beam illuminated a large, cumbersome object. They were back. Jason, what's wrong? You're pale. A wide, old concrete staircase rose into the void. They called to me, begging me to climb. Just one step, just one step. Jason, I feel it. What you said yesterday, I feel it. It's wrong, they shouldn't be here, Nadia whined, fear flashing in her eyes. Yeah, you're right, I said, tearing my eyes away from the terrible thing. Just don't look at it, we'll be fine. This time, I didn't feel relief as we escaped the stairs' pull. I had never seen stairs 2 days in a row. They always appeared more sporadically, never with rhythm or consistency, so seeing them twice made me a bit uneasy. Nadia and I didn't mention the stairs again that night. We were both exhausted and eager for rest. I'd be damned if I let a stupid staircase ruin a good night's sleep. Nadia was already snoring by the time I got into bed, and I drifted off as soon as my head hit the pillow. If only we could have slept until morning. Maybe she would still be here then. I woke up in the pitch-black room. Nadia wasn't beside me in bed. At first, I wasn't worried. Sometimes she snuck off to the bathroom in the middle of the night. I didn't want to go back to sleep until I had her beside me. I waited and waited in vain. Then after what felt like an eternity, I finally called out, "Hey, honey, are you coming to bed soon?" No response. That's when panic set in. Nadia would never ignore me like that. I jumped out of bed and ran straight to the bathroom. Empty, my heart began to pound like a sledgehammer. Alarms blared in my head, telling me something was wrong, and I felt helpless to silence them. I searched the cabin frantically to no avail. Nadia was nowhere to be found. Then, amidst the chaos, an idea flashed in my head. Why hadn't I thought of it sooner? Nadia's phone wasn't on the nightstand, but I could track her location on Find My Friends. I fumbled to unlock my phone and opened the app. I had to know she was okay. I loaded the app and found Nadia's icon. She's nearby, the app said. She's only a few 100 feet from the cabin. I pulled on my shorts and ran out into the cold air. I ran barefoot through leaves, rocks, and acorns. I had no time to get dressed. At that moment, I didn't care if my feet were torn to shreds, as long as Nadia was okay. I finally reached the point where her phone should have been. I called frantically, praying she would pick up this time. I saw something glowing among the leaves, and not much further, I found the person I was looking for. But instead of being filled with joy at finding the love of my life, my blood ran cold. Nadia's face was partially illuminated by the moonlight filtering through the trees. She was looking down at me, tears streaming down her cheeks. At her feet was a staircase. This time, it was elaborately decorated. White marble steps glimmered even in the dark, topped with an ornate red carpet. The staircase looked like it led straight to heaven, and that terrified me. Fear engulfed me like a tidal wave as we looked at each other. I wanted to move. I wanted to run up, hug her, and pull her away from those damn things. But I couldn't. I was pinned to the spot, forced to watch the girl of my dreams step onto the last stair. Jason, please, I don't want to go. I love you and want to be with you forever. I have to know. I feel them calling me. Please don't let them take me, Nadia sobbed, reaching out her hand to me. I wanted to grab it, pull her into my arms, tell her everything would be okay. But I was stuck. I was forced to watch in absolute horror as Nadia reluctantly stepped onto the last stair to the top. It felt as if time slowed immensely. 1 second I was paralyzed, my eyes locked on Nadia and the evil staircase. And the next second, I was completely alone. Nadia and the staircase had vanished, dissolved into the cold night air as if they had never existed. The weight of that night will stay with me until the day I die. I screamed, I yelled, I punched the ground until my fists were bloody and my throat was hoarse. Nadia had been taken from me right before my eyes, and I did nothing. I blamed myself for a long time afterward. Damn it, I still do. I don't think I'll ever get over it. That's my punishment, I suppose. To live a dull, meaningless life while images of my lost girlfriend run through my head day after day. That's why I drink. Strangely, I've never seen the stairs again. They are actually the only reason I'm still here. Because maybe if I convince myself to climb that last step, there might be a chance I'll be reunited with Nadia. And to me, that's a chance I have to take. 5 years. 5 years he sat in the woods with his gun, playing Russian roulette with fate. Not because he wants to die, but because he wants a chance. A chance to see those stairs again, a chance to climb them, a chance to find Nadia. You know, there are things in this world that don't belong. Things that are fundamentally wrong. Stairs in the woods that lead nowhere. Churches that feed deities with human bones. Realities that overlap and bleed into each other. And we're just ants trying to comprehend the meaning of the universe with our tiny brains. Another misfired bullet. Another year for Jason. Another year of waiting in the woods, hoping to see the stairs that will lead him to the one he loves. Tonight ends here, my friends. 4 stories, 4 different ways to lose yourself in an emergency alert, in sacred fire, between realities on endless stairs. I'm Jeff, and if you see something that doesn't belong in this world, perhaps it's best to turn away. Some mysteries aren't worth exploring, some doors shouldn't be opened, and some stairs should never be climbed. Hey everyone, it's me again. This July night is so cold, isn't it? The wind whistling through the studio window gives me chills. But perhaps that cold is nothing compared to the story I'm about to tell you. Today I received a rather special email. The sender didn't leave a real name, only signed off as the clown who no longer laughs. He claimed to be a comedian, but after reading his story, I'm not sure anyone will dare to laugh anymore. Let me read it to you. The comedian who stopped laughing. To the show. Please don't laugh when you hear my story. By day, I'm a brilliant comedian, a handsome guy with coffee-brown skin and a charming smile that melts girls from here to the Himalayas. By night, I write for a fairly popular comedy website. The job mostly consists of swallowing hate mail and trying to come up with witty comebacks. You think I'm hilarious, right? My last performance was reviewed as funny as 20 Holocausts plus the Ebola virus. And I replied, well, you smell like broccoli. Yeah, I'm not great at this, but I have a degree and a decent resume, so I still get hired. Now that you know who I am, you're probably expecting a funny story. But I need to reiterate, please don't laugh. Really, for your own safety. If you're reading something funny online, which I'm sure you are, then turn it off and focus here for a moment. I'll wait. All right, now I'll tell it from the middle of the story, like the movie Memento, but much worse. The thing that looked like an anal thermometer dropped onto my lap. It took a few seconds for me to realize the glowing blue line in the corner of the test stick. I looked up at Marlene and said, "You just peed on this and now it's on my pants." She laughed. Anyway, those pants are terrible. Actually, this is just a grand plan to get rid of them. I haven't mentioned Marlene because honestly, I didn't really like her. She kept throwing pee-soaked pregnancy tests on my pants as if it was a conspiracy to curb my fashion sense. But she also cooked breakfast for me, had a cute dimple that appeared when she smiled, and most importantly, she was the love of my life. I swallowed my smile and brushed the pee-soaked pregnancy test off my pants, took a pill with a gulp of water, and asked, "Are you ready?" She replied. "Are you ready? To be a mother, to be a father." We hugged tightly, laughing with joy. The hug was tight and strong. Two desperate people who just needed someone to hold on to as their lives turned a new page. I realized I needed to make serious money. So I went on tour: New York, Philadelphia, Chicago. I put all my money into a savings account, naming it, "Hey, you idiot, you're about to be a dad." The bank teller found it cute, so I gave her the middle finger and slowly backed out of the door. I'm not cute, I'm the boss. But the account was nothing. Frustrated, but whatever. Swallowed my pill with a Coke. When the work in America dried up, I decided to try my luck back home in Bengal, India. Good to visit relatives anyway, right? Bought a ticket, packed my bags, slept on the plane with a terrible neck ache, then stepped out to breathe my homeland's air, faintly smelling of cow dung. I only performed one show before my uncle dragged me on a tour around the countryside. My God, everything was pretty normal. Poor brown children stood in awe, looking at my dingy white rental van, asking what I did for a living. For my uncle, I grunted a response as I looked out the window, admiring the rivers and trees. Then we arrived at the village of Haja. On the surface, it looked like every other village, but upon closer inspection, you'd find the villagers mostly pass their time with communal debauchery. No, wait, that's every village in Bengal. I'm not kidding, so don't laugh. Not even a slightly heavier breath than normal. Seriously, Brack has done research on this. Google it. Anyway, the truly strange thing about this place was what we scornfully called the Herotic cult. They took a few verses from the Quran, mixed them with Vedic hymns, cooked them in a spoon with a dash of Mongolian ritual and blood sacrifice. This part of India has been invaded by so many cultures and religions that cults sprouted up like Dungeons and Dragons players in the village. They're obsessed with their fantasy games. The only difference is that, in rural Bengal, they actually kill animals for their stupid fantasy games. A lunatic heard I was a comedian and came to interrogate me. He had a strange voice, sounding like the Prime Minister of Bhutan, but his face showed no signs of madness. But you know, madness is internal. He asked, "So, what is comedy?" "Good question," I replied. It's when you tell jokes and everyone laughs." He grinned widely. No, that's just a manifestation of great humor. Do you know the true nature of laughter, the reason it exists?" I coughed and mumbled nonsense, but the guy continued. "Laughter is fear's cousin. You understand? It's when the human psyche is plummeting down the icy tunnel of terror, then suddenly encounters comfort. It sounds strange and fanatical, but it also made a lot of sense. I nodded, pretending to listen. When a man thinks he's encountered a tiger in the forest, his knees trembling at the low growl and the sound of claws raking bark, he's paralyzed. But when he realizes it's just the wind rustling leaves, he'll laugh, and laugh because laughter is the brother who is always there. Understand? I swallowed my pill with a swig of whiskey from my flask. Yeah, I get it, sort of. He looked at my flask with disapproval, then continued. It's also a defense mechanism. When a person faces a tiger, its jaws already curving around fangs, knowing he's hopeless, he laughs as if laughter will appear in place of fear and his brother, death. He believes it. He craves it, so he calls upon laughter, hoping for safety. He ignored my skeptical gaze. But now, laughter, envious of its cousin's power, has neglected its duty. He's starting to change from but surely. I placed my hand on the man's shoulder, gently saying, "I'm leaving." He grabbed my hand, slowly saying, "I can let you meet him. I feel that as a warrior of laughter, you will want to see his face." Interesting offer, I guess? I figured they'd give me the best opium in the village. I never turn down free drugs, they're expensive. So I let them blindfold me and lead me to a crude stone altar. There, I saw a wonderful glass of what looked like Fargon coffee milk and a few hallucinogens. They might have added a bit of blood, but that was just a local specialty. I drank it down and let the universe rip open my head, then shove it down its own starlit throat, where superheated jets and colossal nebulae blazed like cherry bombs on the cosmic horizon, vibrating with grand music, blending into a voice as clear as a violin in a crystal flute. You are running away. A part of me swallowed as stars exploded before my eyes, but I listened. I once helped you forget the mockery of fear, but millennia can change even the most joyful. Everything turned red and grew hotter. My ears rang. Give me the seriousness I deserve and never joke again. I woke up in the back of the van with my uncle shaking his head from the driver's seat. A few hours later, I was on a plane heading to JFK. Marlene waited for me, gently rubbing her belly and calling me back. I put my bag down. She kissed me unexpectedly, leaning in, showing how much she missed me. You've been on tour for months, you know. I know. Let's make love. All right. I was smoking on the apartment balcony when I realized I had forgotten a bag in India. Damn it, I startled, chugging my glass of water. I went inside to get my bus card and train ticket, but Marlene called from the bedroom, telling me to put my ear to her belly. I leaned down, listening to the tiny beats signaling I was about to be a father, but all I felt was fear tightening my insides and the echoing voice. Don't laugh, don't joke. I kissed her cheek, then slipped out the door, rushing down the elevator to the street. I needed to find a job somewhere. This morning, I posted a few articles on different sites, got praised, earned $300, but it was never enough. Not enough for the child about to arrive, not enough for a life changing everything you thought about life. But that wasn't the problem. I was on the subway to the office near Times Square when I saw a man in ragged, faded brown clothes trembling in the corner. His face was rough, his hair gray. I guessed he was about 40 or 50. He looked straight into my eyes and yelled in coarse Hindi, "Muh hai karo." I don't understand Hindi, so I replied in Bengali, "What are you saying?" He licked his teeth and growled, "He will take revenge on you. He will show you he needs to be taken seriously like his brothers." The bastard was a former Herotic cultist, high on drugs in New York, probably in Jackson Heights, where all those crazy brown people gather. I went to the office, then home, crawled into bed with my head resting on Marlene's belly, her hand stroking my hair. Somewhere beneath the churning guts and pounding liver was something alive, with raspy breaths and a guttural, furious laugh. The Herotic cult, the stranger on the train swearing vengeance, the universe, and something called laughter. What were they feeding in her belly? The next morning, I told her she should reconsider having the baby. Her face wrinkled, contorted with anger and hurt. What about us? I've already told Mom. She's preparing a celebration party. I wanted to tell her about Haja and the laughter in her belly, but she would call me crazy and ask if I was on drugs. My editor called, congratulating me in the middle of our argument, saying I was promoted to lead editor. The internet had said I was truly funny. Good news that made us stop yelling for a moment, standing motionless on opposite sides of the bedroom. A few minutes later, she grabbed her coat, saying she wanted to go for a walk. My phone rang immediately afterward. I spoke like a sad machine gun. "I'm sorry, I love you so much, please come back." But the voice on the other end cut in with a deep, husky Nepalese accent. There is a way to stop what is happening. Laughter wants to teach you that he cannot be underestimated and has infected your new family. I was stunned by the word, family, as he continued. It's too late now to abort the child of his minion, but there is a way to deprive it of the nourishment it needs. It is a derivative of the primal nature of laughter, so it needs a continuous flow of humor. Do you understand? It needs the host's laughter. What you must do is perform a procedure to deprive the host of the ability to comprehend laughter. This procedure dates back to 1945, completely simple and safe. Are you ready? Marlene came home late with mascara smudged around her eyes. I whispered sweet nothings, then led her to the candlelit dining room and the dinner I cooked half an hour ago. She smiled through her tears, went to shower, then joined me for pasta and wine, laughing more as we talked, finally making love under flickering candlelight and satin sheets. She slept near 3:00 a.m. I used an old belt to tie her to the bedpost. She woke up as I finished her leg and said, "I've tried this trick before, remember?" But I just quietly kissed her forehead and gently placed an ice pick in the corner of her eye like a golf tee on a lawn, then lifted the heavy ice axe. Her eyes widened in fear as I gently tapped it through the thin bone of her eye socket. The pick slid smoothly like a banana peel. I stirred her brain like a spoon in ice cream. Her eyes were dark, and her face became still and emotionless. I remembered the conversation with the man on the phone, remembered saying, "But I love her," and hearing him say, "Sometimes you need to perform brain surgery on the one you love." As I sat on her silent, serene body, tears flowed. The bed sheets were stained brown with feces and red with miscarriage. I laughed in the only way laughter would accept, desperately, pleadingly, maniacally. The police came and arrested me for domestic violence reported due to my wife's black eyes, and here I am. You know, I warned you throughout, but I hope you laughed. I hope you bastards taste what I had to go through and learn your lesson. You will learn, and the lesson will be etched deep. Take him seriously. Don't laugh. This story, it chills me to the bone. This man, he did terrible things in the name of something he called laughter. But the scariest thing isn't what he did, but how he recounts it as if he still believes he was right. I don't know if this story is true. I hope it isn't. But one thing is for sure. After hearing it, I don't dare to laugh tonight. Can you hear it? This room is strangely silent, as if the darkness itself is holding its breath, waiting for something or someone. Ah, it's just the wind, right? Please be careful when you're alone in the dark of night, and remember that sometimes, not laughing is the safest way. I'll be back soon with another story from our chilling inbox. Until then, keep the lights on. It's midnight, the time when the line between the living world and the realm of the dead is thinnest. I'm Jeff, and you're listening to Late Night Horror Stories on my channel. Just now, while reorganizing the letters sent to the show, I found an old envelope sealed with red wax. Inside was a handwritten journal page, the handwriting shaky as if the writer was in despair. No name, no address, just a line at the bottom. This is my final confession. I think you should hear this story, a story of love and the price paid for it. The last confession. I cannot be sure what drew me back to that forest. Was it a morbid nostalgia? Years had passed since that carefully orchestrated walk beneath the canopy, or was it a longing to reclaim some fragment of her? Whatever it was, old flames are best left extinguished. Unless one is prepared to face the inferno. A man can easily be consumed by a conflagration of his own making. It was close to midnight when I awoke, my fitful sleep interrupted by a dream I couldn't recall. I rubbed my eyes and sat up, my feet recoiling from the cold floorboards. The images that had haunted me dissolved upon waking, leaving only a sense of profound dread and a scent in my nostrils. Her scent, not perfume, but the natural human smell, indescribable, inimitable, and in this case, unforgettable. What about her could ever be forgot? The day she completely faded from my memory would be the day I had to admit I had lived too many days on this earth. Though it would bring peace, it was not a day I wished or deserved to see. To defile her memory for a shred of self-comfort was cowardly. I was a better man than that. The decision to walk, or rather to hike, was unconscious. Shoes were laced, and I was out the front door before I truly comprehended what I was doing to clear my mind. Something within me was stirred. Sleep would not come if it remained unsoothed. I wandered into the night, lost in thought, inevitably finding her in my mind. Dead, gone for over a year, yet her ghost lingered in my mind, the haunting image of unrequited love. How had we gone so wrong? More importantly, why had I never fixed it? Could I truly not, or was I merely unwilling, too hurt and selfish to see the truth? Doubt is a dangerous thing. It can hunt a man to his grave if he's not careful. My doubts, like a pack of wolves, kept their distance as they stalked, waiting for me to tire. I tripped over a tree root on the path, and despite my best efforts, I fell, my hands failing to break my fall, my face hitting the ground with a dull thud. Slightly dazed, I pushed myself up, carefully getting to my feet as I realized where I was. This path and ahead that clearing. What a night. It was a simple matter, convincing a teenage cannabis enthusiast that tonight's session would be better held in the woods. A beautiful autumn night, a full moon illuminating our path. Sounds simple, say what you will about the wisdom of my plan, but the disguise was perfect. So we walked, talking, laughing, and exchanging smiles that only lovers give each other. It was easily the longest and most pleasant walk of my life, though it probably wasn't more than 10 minutes before we reached the edge of the clearing. A modest place, only a few meters wide, with a surprising opening in the tree canopy revealing the moon's grace. Nothing stirred except my heart as I acted, pretending to trip, spinning quickly, and the trap was set. The small jewelry box opened before she realized I was on one knee, revealing the diamond's beauty as I asked for something even more precious. Her eyes, which seemed as large as the moon itself, those chaotic hazel eyes that had mesmerized me from the first day we met. Seconds, an eternity passed. In those seconds, panic and doubt had taken root, only to be erased by a resounding yes. A tearful kiss, a warm embrace, our vows sealed as we made love beneath the moonlight. Years passed, and the covenant of that night went unfulfilled. Drugs, infidelity, endless tragedies caused by two flawed people, unable to comprehend the extent of the harm their actions inflicted on the one they loved most. Together, then apart, the cycle repeated until love was buried beneath the wounds we inflicted. The one who escaped was torn apart, the only one, the only love, the greatest source of joy and pain. She took herself from this life. The tragedy of life, too much to bear, and her own medicine took her life. Her passing defined my life as her presence once had years before. Tears flowed freely as I relived it all, realizing where I was and what it meant. My despair was interrupted as something flickered in the corner of my eye, something fleeting, white as the moon, ethereal on the path ahead. A sense of impending dread clenched me, inexplicable yet undeniable. Something was waiting around the bend. I felt its call in my mind, a siren of the forest urging me onward. Each step was an internal battle, the desire to turn away from the past slowly lost to an indescribable yearning, to reclaim a piece of our former selves. I wiped my tears as I reached the clearing, our clearing. Wiping away the last drop, I inhaled sharply. I faced what awaited tonight. She was there, as beautiful as the first day I saw her, ethereal, her porcelain white skin differentiated from the form-fitting dress by something sinister, defying perception. Horrifying yet captivating, she stood there, feet hovering above the ground, her arms tracing patterns in the autumn wind. As if she hadn't noticed me, still absorbed in something, mesmerized by the impossible, my whole body trembled. At first from fear, soon after from cold. The winter chill had arrived. Breath escaped my trembling lips into the wind. The silence was unbearable. I stood before something that shouldn't exist, and the willpower to speak seemed beyond me. The search for the strength to form a syllable was arduous, the effort consuming me to the point of almost forgetting the incredible circumstances I found myself in. A minute passed, or perhaps an hour, before my body consented to my will. A single word escaped my lips. Tara. Calling her name was unreal. She couldn't exist. It simply wasn't possible. I had read the reports, had seen her ashes before my eyes, but she was there, vivid, and now seemed to recognize my presence. She smiled, a smile that once melted my heart when young, froze it as an adult. Those eyes, the windows to her soul I once gazed into for hours, still held their color, but only reflected the abyss waiting beyond the curtain of death. The pain in her eyes was clear, and despite my efforts, I couldn't look away. She bored a hole through me, as if her eyes weren't measuring my form, but the essence of my soul. Her lips moved as if to speak, but all that reached my ears was the sound of blood flowing, a crimson river pouring from her human core, dripping pills, capsules, medications, the very drugs that had taken her life, flowing freely, seemingly innumerable. Nothing could stem the tide as she advanced, floating towards me, the inescapable embodiment of fate. Death was encroaching on my personal space, and I found myself unwilling to flee its gorgeous horror. The face of everything I had ever loved, half-stained crimson, her mouth an eternal fountain of pharmaceutical-coated honey, drew closer to my face, as if she were leaning in for a final kiss. Our lips touched, her blood surged through me as the world spun, fading to black as weightlessness took hold. I woke up to find myself safe in my bed, the smell of blood and vomit clinging to my nostrils, ready to dismiss the horrifying night as a particularly bad nightmare. My hand brushed my face, wiping away the residue of my coma-like sleep, only to feel stickiness, covered in crimson evidence that I hadn't merely dreamed. The metallic taste of blood on my lips further affirmed the terrible truth, and I sank back into bed under the weight of the meaning. No longer able to deny the impossible, I was left with only one course of cautious action. She was still waiting for me, unable to continue in death without me, just as I could not continue living without her. I had to arrange everything, however meager, because on the next full moon, I would leave this world. A single rope would sever my connection to this world and bind me to my love in the next. I ask those who find this paper to pray for me. Not that I be forgiven for what I must do, but that I may be the man for her in death that I could not be in life. There are loves that never die. Even when one is gone, even when only dust remains, love clings, still calls out in the darkness of night. I don't know who wrote this journal. I don't know if he carried out his intentions. But if he is listening somewhere in this world or another, I want to say that sometimes true love isn't about dying together, but about living for each other. But who knows, maybe right now under the late moon, they are dancing together in that forest. Not with flesh and bone, but with souls freed from earthly burdens. The moon is so bright tonight. I wonder how many people are looking up at that moon, remembering lost loved ones? How many are waiting for a sign, a call from the other side? Be careful what you wish for on a full moon night. Sometimes the dead can hear. I'll be back shortly with another story. This time from someone still alive, at least I hope so. Hello, I'm sitting here in the studio, listening to the wind whistling through the cracks in the door like someone's whisper or something's. Welcome back to Late Night Horror Stories. I'm Jeff. This afternoon, I received a call. The caller was a young man. His voice trembled. He said he needed to tell someone about what was happening to him. He said his mother wasn't his mother anymore. I recorded the call, and now, let's listen to this terrifying story. My mother isn't my mother anymore. From a young age, I lived with my grandmother. My mother divorced when I was very young but remarried soon after. Due to financial circumstances, my grandmother converted her garage into living quarters for my mother and stepfather until they could afford their own place. There wasn't enough room for me, so I continued to live at my grandmother's house. My mother and stepfather eventually became financially stable and bought a new house. I was used to the neighborhood and had made some friends, so when asked if I wanted to move in with them, I chose to stay and finish high school at my grandmother's. I moved out on my own for a while with some acquaintances, but after about a year, things fell apart. I needed to move, and I thought this would be a good opportunity to finally live with my mom for a while and get to know her and my stepfather better. At that time, I had just started dating my wife and planned to get married as soon as we had enough money. So it wouldn't be for long. We thought it would be quickest to live with my parents to save for the wedding without incurring more debt on top of student loans. My sister was away at college, so I got to stay in her old room in the basement. The basement was beautifully designed. Going down the open stairs from the main floor, to the left was a door leading into the basement. To the right was another door leading to the laundry room with a bathroom, an extra fridge, and a door into my room. To the left was the recreation room and a bar that my stepfather built. It was beautifully designed with surround sound. I had watched many action movies there whenever I visited. I moved my belongings in on a Friday night, quite impressed that I finished in one day. I was exhausted and fell asleep immediately. The next day, around mid-afternoon, I was heading downstairs to my room to play games when I paused at the basement entrance. I looked to the left towards the bar, where there was an open space with an old rocking chair. The room was dim in the sunlight filtering through the basement door. The rocking chair, it wasn't moving, but I had a strange feeling that something was there. I didn't feel like something was looking at me. I just sensed a presence in the room. I really didn't like it. I walked past the laundry room into my room and closed the door. I told myself I was being silly, played games, and forgot all about it. It was probably around 1 a.m. when I decided to go to bed. My parents usually stayed up until 3 or 4 a.m., so I could still hear them clicking on their laptops upstairs. I played casual games late into the night. When I went to the bathroom outside my room to brush my teeth, my mom had said it might be hard to wake up in the morning if I closed the laundry room door and my room door because no sunlight would get in. Knowing that, I left the laundry room door open. As I walked past the laundry room door leading to the rec room, I felt that presence again, much stronger this time. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up. I quickly went into the bathroom and closed the door. After finishing my nightly hygiene, I sprinted back to my room, just a few steps away. I closed my room door and considered whether to close it completely. I really hated not waking up on time in the morning and knew I wouldn't wake up if the room was pitch dark because the door blocked out sunlight. I left the door slightly ajar, not too wide, but enough for light to filter in the morning, turned the box fan on low, and climbed into bed. I'm a bit paranoid by nature, so when I arranged my room, I made sure my bed faced the door with my feet towards the wall so I could see out of the room. I closed my eyes, trying to sleep, making sure to lie as close to the wall as possible, away from the door and the edge of the bed. After a few minutes, I felt it again. I was being watched. I opened my right eye very slightly, careful not to look like I was awake if someone truly was watching. My room door was much wider open, almost fully open. Maybe it was the fan blowing, I told myself, but I was still uneasy. I slowly opened my eyes, watching the shadows shift as my eyes adjusted to the inky blackness. I simply couldn't see through the darkness. Now I could feel the presence, the feeling of not just being watched, but that someone or something was there, stronger than ever, right outside my room door. I closed my eyes again and tried to calm down. I'm being silly, I told myself. I've never been afraid of the dark. Why am I afraid now? As I tried to reassure myself to get some damn sleep, I felt the presence shift. I kept my eyes tightly shut because I didn't want to know what lurked beyond the veil of night. The invisible void crept into my room, slowly moving across the room to the diagonal corner opposite my bed. The presence stayed there for a long time. During that entire time, I didn't dare move, afraid I would attract more attention. After what felt like an eternity, the presence began to shift to other parts of the room but never came close to the bed. I forced myself to ignore all sensations and busied my mind with games and plans for tomorrow. After a while, I was able to fall into a dreamless sleep. From then on, every night I felt this presence watching from outside my door, always coming in for a while and shifting around the room, never coming close. I got used to it, thinking I was just acting childish or that wedding stress was playing tricks on my mind. Despite being convinced of these things, I never opened my eyes when I felt the presence enter. Nor did I sleep without my back to the wall. This went on for about 8 months before I got fed up. I was tired of feeling this presence watching me, hated the creepy feeling it brought. I decided enough was enough. And even though I worried I'd oversleep without the sunlight helping me wake up, I closed my room door all night. I maintained my sleeping position, back to the wall, just in case. For a few minutes, I thought the feeling wouldn't appear, but as soon as I convinced myself, I felt the presence right outside the door again, waiting in the laundry room. I felt a little safer knowing it couldn't see me anymore, but I still didn't like feeling it waiting, lurking in the darkness right outside my door. The next night, I decided not only to close my room door, but also the laundry room door leading to the rec room and upstairs. It didn't help much. That night, I felt the presence lurking in the rec room, pacing back and forth along the wall and door separating me from the rest of the basement. Still uneasy, but the feeling lessened enough for me to sleep better. I started closing both doors every night but paid a heavy price. I no longer woke up on time with my alarm clock. Sometimes I was hours late. That wouldn't do, so I decided to buy an outdoor light timer to turn on the floor lamp across the room at a certain time. This worked for about a week, but the timing quickly became off. No matter how many times I reset it, it would turn on too early, too late, or not at all. I decided it was time to be brave, open both doors, and let the sunlight help me wake up again. The moment I turned off the light, the presence returned. It felt stronger than ever, as if it was angry that I had locked it out of my room. However, the presence remained on the other side of the room, so I just forced myself to sleep each night, ignoring the presence lurking in the pitch-black corner of the room. In my rebellion against the presence, my mother started closing the doors on weekends when I could sleep in. Of course, the presence didn't like this decision of mine at all. After a few weeks of locking it out on weekends, what I hoped would never happen began. The presence started to move closer to the bed. On Tuesday night when it first happened, it moved very slightly from its familiar corner to the middle of the room. For the next few nights, it stayed in the middle of the room and stopped pacing along the opposite wall. The weekend was quite peaceful. I didn't even feel it wandering the rec room all weekend, as if the presence itself was afraid of getting too close. That Sunday night, everything changed. When I turned off the light, preparing for the inevitable presence to wander into the room again, it came faster than ever. It didn't go to the familiar corner or the middle of the room. It came closer than ever, just a nightstand away from me. I was certainly terrified and couldn't think of anything. All I could do was lie still and let the void consume me, eyes tightly shut. After a few minutes, I'm not sure of the actual time, the presence moved to the foot of the bed. It didn't stand still. I felt it constantly shifting at the foot of the bed, pacing back and forth. I don't know how I could sleep feeling what seemed to be contempt, or perhaps hatred, from the foot of the bed. Fortunately, the presence calmed itself and returned to the middle of the room for the rest of the night. I only had to endure a few more weeks because my wedding day was approaching. I was very ready to leave my mother's house. Something in the basement was becoming too much to bear. In the few weeks leading up to the wedding, the presence always came quickly and hovered near the bed. At the foot of the bed, I slept less, ate less, and became irritable with the haunting pressure compounded by wedding stress. On the second night before leaving my mother's house, I decided I wanted to know what was coming into the room. I don't know why I hadn't thought of it before. I rummaged through old childhood things my mom kept in the closet and took out a nightlight. I plugged it in the corner where the presence usually was. Now I would be able to see, even if only a little, what was coming into the room. I also wondered if it would even come in if there was a light. But with the nightmare about to end, I felt braver than ever. Around 2 a.m., I decided to go to sleep, so I plugged in the nightlight and hesitated to open the door. There was no turning back. Once I turned off the light, the presence would rush in, or it would choose to stay away from the nightlight. I took a deep breath, opened both doors, and sprinted into bed. I hesitated again to turn off the light. There was still a chance to retreat. I didn't have to work tomorrow morning because it was the day before the wedding. I could still close both doors and get a good night's sleep. I thought about it for a minute or two and finally decided if I didn't do it now, I would never know. I turned off the light and for the first time kept my eyes open while pulling the blankets around me as tightly as possible. I couldn't see yet because my eyes hadn't adjusted to the ambient light. I already felt the presence outside the door, waiting in the laundry room. My eyes began to pierce through the darkness, and I saw the void take shape. It was short, sitting low to the ground, but I couldn't make out its clear outline. I was horrified. I had never truly believed something was there. I didn't move and just stared at the thing, obscured by the darkness of the laundry room. I couldn't control myself and squeezed my eyes shut. I debated in my head whether to open my eyes for a long time, but knew for sure I wouldn't move. I decided to peek again, and what I saw still sends chills down my spine. The short creature I had described was actually bent down with its hands on the floor between its legs, sitting in the middle of my room. I stared straight into wide, unblinking eyes, completely horrified as my mother crouched on the floor, staring at me, her head tilted to one side with a small smile on her face. Her dark blonde, curly hair was disheveled and wild. Had this been going on for over a year? My mother stared at me creepily as I slept. Did she do this to my sister? Was she possessed? Millions of questions raced through my head in seconds, but as quickly as I discovered my mother had been watching me all this time, she began to move out of the room. She slowly shifted her limbs, keeping them close to the floor, moving sideways to continue staring at me with that deranged look. She stopped at my room door for the longest minute of my life, then disappeared into the darkness of the laundry room. I didn't feel the creepy gaze from the laundry room. She must have gone back to the rec room or straight upstairs. I really hoped it was upstairs, but I wasn't brave enough to find out. If my mother was crazy or something, it was better not to provoke her. Who knew what she would do in that state? I checked the time on my phone, and it had been over an hour since she left the room and I stopped feeling her presence. I turned on the light and sat up in bed. I thought it best to at least check on her, see if she had gone back to bed or not. That's how people die in horror movies, I thought. I figured I could look into the laundry room and know she wasn't hiding there, so I thought it best to at least close the door. She had never bothered to open them before. I got up and slowly walked to the laundry room door. Without thinking, I glanced out into the rec room and saw my mother crouching in the exact same position at the far end of the room near the rocking chair, staring at me in the doorway. She just kept shaking her head back and forth, never taking her eyes off me. I froze. A new wave of horror held me rooted to the floor. My mother began to crawl towards me, shaking her head back and forth while her smile widened and seemed menacing. I slammed the door shut before she could reach it, ran into my room, and locked the door. I heard banging as she crashed into the door. Once, twice, 3 times she hit the door. I was utterly terrified, clutching the wooden nunchucks I bought at a flea market as a kid. I couldn't hit my mother, could I? Anyway, it made me feel safer. The banging on the laundry room door stopped. A minute later, I heard the hinges creak as the door slowly opened. My room doorknob began to twist back and forth, trying to push the door open. I stayed awake all night with the lights on, trembling in the corner of my room, watching the doorknob twist left and right. Around 6 a.m., the doorknob stopped twisting. I waited until 9 a.m., made sure it was daylight, then unlocked the door and ventured out. I peeked into the laundry room. She wasn't there. Still clutching my nunchucks, I looked around the wide-open doorway into the rec room, and she wasn't there either. I peeked a third time around the corner of the door leading upstairs, and she wasn't there. I breathed a sigh of relief and went up to the living room and kitchen. My mother was sitting in her usual spot at the dining table, eating a bowl of cereal. "Hi, honey, did you sleep well?" she asked in her usual cheerful voice. "Yeah, fine. Why do you ask? Did you wake up last night?" She finished chewing a mouthful of cereal and swallowed. "No, I didn't wake up. Why do you ask?" "Nothing, I just thought I heard something in the laundry room." I lied straight to her face. I was about to say, "Hey, why were you trying to kill me or something last night and watching me sleep every night since I moved in here?" "Oh, all right, it's probably just the house settling. You hear everything in that basement," she said, spooning another mouthful of cereal into her mouth. "Yeah, probably nothing," I said, lying again. I let her continue eating and began to prepare for the long day ahead, getting everything ready for the wedding on Saturday. All day I couldn't shake the feeling of what had happened from my mind. It wasn't a dream. I mean, I hadn't slept at all. I had no chance to dream. However, I still had one more night in that house and decided I needed a contingency plan. I asked my best friend, Kim, my best man, to stay with me, claiming I needed help waking up in the morning and focusing on the wedding. I didn't dare tell him what had happened with my mom, partly because I didn't want to scare him, partly because I myself wasn't sure it wasn't too surreal. We stayed up quite late, laughing about silly high school memories and playing games. He fell asleep on the floor, and I forgot all about last night. I was completely exhausted and crashed into bed. I waited a while to see if my mom would reappear with my friend there. She didn't come, nor did I feel her presence in the rec room. I fell asleep quickly, reassured by my friend's presence, which seemed to curb whatever my mother was doing. The wedding went smoothly. It was the best time of my life. My wife and I drove to Kansas City and stayed for nearly a week, enjoying our honeymoon. I didn't think about the events that happened a few days before and completely forgot everything until I opened our wedding gifts. We emptied the box of cards and went through them, making a list of who gave what to write thank you notes. I opened my mother's card, the kind with a pocket for money. I read the message written on the left side of the card and pulled the money out of the pocket. A small folded piece of paper fell to the floor. My wife didn't notice, so I picked it up and opened it. On the paper, scrawled in thick, large letters, it read, "Mom will always be with you." I quickly folded the paper back up and threw it into the trash. My wife didn't need to know, and if I told her the story, she would be afraid of the dark every night. So I kept the story and the contents of the paper to myself. A week later, I woke up in my apartment one night in a cold sweat. My wife was sleeping soundly beside me. I felt thirsty and got up to get water from the kitchen. I walked into the kitchen and poured a tall glass of cold water. As I drank, I heard shuffling outside the front door. I didn't think anything of it. It was probably the neighbors across the hall. Then the doorknob began to twist back and forth, the knob moving, making a slight creaking sound. Each time it twisted, I looked through the peephole, but no one was there. I closed the peephole and grabbed the doorknob to keep it from twisting. I felt the pressure of someone trying to twist the doorknob back and forth on the other side of the door. After a while, they stopped trying to twist the doorknob. I looked through the peephole again and saw my mother, crouched low to the ground, staring at me with wide, unblinking eyes and that menacing smile. I called this guy back after hearing his story, but the phone number was no longer active. You know the scariest thing about this story? It's not the mother watching her son sleep, it's not the way she moved in the shadows like an animal. The scariest thing is that she's still out there somewhere. Maybe right now she's standing outside someone's door. Maybe it's your door. Go check your doors. I'll wait. Are they locked? Good. But remember, locks only stop people who want to enter in a normal way. As for those people, or those things that crawl on the floor in the dark, they always find a way. Oh, I'm sorry, that wasn't me laughing. It seems we have a guest in the studio tonight. I'll be back later. Hello, I'm Jeff. Sorry about the incident just now. Everything has been resolved. At least, I hope so. I want to share a special document with you. A friend who works at Fair Hills Psychiatric Hospital in Connecticut sent me a copy of a journal. He and his group of friends found it while exploring the abandoned hospital. The strange thing is that the journal entries seem to be written in reverse order, as if the author started from sanity and gradually descended into madness. Or perhaps the other way around. I'll read them in the exact order they were found. You be the judge of whether the journal writer is recovering or falling. The Fair Hills Asylum Journal. Journal Entry 1. What kind of world do we live in where the insane collapse of a human being becomes pure entertainment? When words flash across a television screen, capturing, in the simplest terms possible, the shattering of a human soul. How does one begin to understand the world of another who has been stamped a pariah? How can an entire race turn its back on its own kind, only occasionally turning back to cast stones? Questions. Foolish, repetitive questions. Questions I ask myself every day as if I were the only one to whom the answers held enough weight and value. Questions that, due to current circumstances, could only be answered in complete solitude. I ask myself these questions as if they were feeding my very existence. Yet, I find myself inclined to offer the best answer. You may have seen it. Perhaps on the evening news as one of those vapid stories from a remote rural area that airs when your boring little town runs out of interesting stories. It's one of those stories intended to scare you, as most media is intended to do. A story that makes you sigh in relief that you live in a happy, normal town with a happy, normal family. One can only dream, I suppose. It must be nice to still have the veil covering one's completely unaware eyes of the world around them. I fear I lost those privileges long ago. I am not insane. I am merely lucid. I was not touched by God. What foolish God would want me anyway? I have sinned, and unlike most, I choose not to repent. Instead, I rejoice. I rejoice. Sociopath, monster, demon, murderer, words that mean a great deal to many but barely echo in my conscience. It's funny because most words bounce off these cold, dark walls. You would think that at some point they would find their way into my mind. For better or for worse, these words mean nothing to me. I know what I am, and perhaps more importantly, what I am not. This is all I have. I have these words to justify my actions. That's all it comes down to, words. It was words that were the catalyst for my actions. Words that brought me to this personal hell, and words that keep my sanity. Sanity, such a fragile word. Journal entry 2. I find it funny how all these people get caught up in business that isn't their own. Apparently, I've gained a bit of notoriety across the country, as one of my friendly escorts informed me. Let them hate me. Everyone needs to hate something. That's just how the world works. Let them justify my actions in whatever way they choose. I know the reason for what I did. Do you know what it feels like to have something to fight for? I'm sure you do. Everyone has something to fight for. Again, it's human nature. However, do you know what it feels like to be compelled to do something? To have your mind completely focused on achieving one goal and one goal only. One might call it mind control. He, meaning me, knows what that feels like. The body is merely a vessel for the soul. The soul is a very fragile thing. The only thing that protects the soul is the mind, not weak, but fragile. However, the amount of power one has over their mind changes over time. Where does one go when they are no longer themselves? Is anyone's guess, as is who is in control when they are no longer there. I am in control of me. They condemned me to die. If I were still lucid, I wouldn't let them take control like this. Journal entry 3. The silence is what frightens me and something I am unaccustomed to. When everything is quiet, I fear that someone is plotting my downfall somewhere not far away. I know it sounds ridiculous, but it's what constantly runs through my head. I've reviewed the previous entries in this little notebook. My handwriting is different now. I feel my thought process is changing too. I feel different. I feel pulled by a different force. These walls are changing me. This place is changing me. Everything that has happened. Everything I have done. There's something compelling me to feel no pity for those who have suffered, despite the little voice in my head telling me otherwise. A voice that is growing louder while the other is fading. Perhaps I'm simply adapting to what this place is forcing me to experience. Or perhaps I've had this in me all along. I cannot be sure. Only time will tell, I suppose. In any case, it seems there is nothing I can do but wait. Wait for whatever fate awaits me here. Journal entry 4. I'm not sure what happened last night. I actually got some sleep. When I woke up, he was dead. He was just lying there in the corner of the room. No blood, no sign of anything happening, but he definitely wasn't breathing. I'm scared. My head is pounding, my vision is blurry. My dreams, they're not like dreams. I hear voices, at least I think they're voices. I can't understand what they're saying. I feel like I'm weaving in and out of my own life. When I woke up, I wasn't in my bed. I was standing in the corner of the room. How does one sleep standing up? Have I always been able to do this? It doesn't feel like I've gotten much sleep. No one has come in to take him away yet. I found his neck was broken. It must have been very early or very late, depending on how you look at it. There's no way he could have broken his own neck. So that means it couldn't have been me. I was asleep all night last night. I'm starting to feel less like myself, and it's terrifying. Maybe that's a good thing. I can't be myself while locked within these walls. I'm not the type of person who belongs in here. I fear my mind is coming apart at the seams. Journal entry 5. These guards, I know they're watching me. They're waiting for me to do something stupid. I'll show them. I'm not going to do anything, as if I have a choice. My hands are shaking unbelievably. The cell is constantly spinning. He doesn't even acknowledge my existence. He just lies there. I bet he's scared of me. Maybe he should be. When I close my eyes, all I see is chaos. I see things I can't even describe. What is my mind trying to tell me? I feel as if my mind and body are no longer connected. I can't even call what's going on in my brain thoughts. At least I'm not in control of what I'm thinking. It's like my brain is on autopilot and I'm thinking someone else's thoughts. They said I would die for what I did. What did I do? I didn't do anything. I almost laughed in their faces. I'm an innocent man. They must have me confused with someone else. That's the only logical explanation. Maybe that's why I don't remember pleading guilty. Maybe that's why I don't remember the fires. That must be it. Yes, maybe I'm just going crazy from the stress. Maybe I've always been crazy. Who knows? I certainly don't. I think I might actually get some sleep. It's so difficult. But I feel my body is about to collapse. You are all I have, little notebook. Journal entry 6. I swear I don't know what I'm doing. I still don't even know what I'm doing. These walls are closing in on me more with each passing second. He just sits there staring blankly at me as if I'm insane. He smells terrible, as if he hasn't bathed. I hope he doesn't read this. Maybe he won't. He doesn't seem to move much. I wonder what he did to be locked in here. Perhaps something worse than me. Do they lock people together based on what they've done? They said I did something bad, something evil. I don't remember anything. My whole life is a blurred mess. They said I burned. No, they said I started many fires. I burned entire cities to ash. Many families died, including my own. How could I do this? I'm not a monster. At least I don't think so. I don't know what to think anymore. Am I even thinking, or is someone telling me what to think? That must be what they're doing here. Yes, taking over my mind, they're telling me what to think. I probably didn't even do anything wrong. All these conspiracies, all this noise floating in my head, it's too much for one person. When I close my eyes, I see symbols, not letters. Maybe they are letters, I can't be sure. They locked me in here without a second thought. They said I pleaded guilty. Why would I do that? I know I didn't do this. This is crazy. Or maybe I'm crazy. They gave me this little notebook to write down my thoughts. They promised not to read it. Yeah, right, I bet eventually. They'll read it. When I'm gone, they'll read this. I'll just be another stupid test subject. I'm human, not a lab rat. I have a conscience. I haven't slept in days. He thinks I'll do something to him while he's sound asleep. I bet. I wouldn't dare. One day I'll get out of here. I promise all I want is my sanity back. The doctor's diagnosis regarding the deceased's suicide in his cell is a mystery to me. In my professional opinion, the only plausible method is that he used the only weapons available. These weapons being, in fact, his bare hands. The autopsy showed the only wound on the body was a puncture in the thoracic cavity and adjacent scratches and cuts around the opening. The prisoner's heart was taken by his own bare hands, ending his life. Further investigation showed the prisoner lived for an unusually long time after taking his heart. This was evidenced by the large amount of blood found in the cell, as well as several other disturbing discoveries. Analysis also showed the order of the journal entries submitted was incorrect. Behind the first entry was an additional note. This note was adhered to the other entry by a large amount of dried blood, as this was the medium used to write the note. The following is what I could decipher from the note, although the handwriting was clean and neat. The ink, if you could call it that, had blurred and smudged over time. I now speculate the letters were written in reverse order from the state I received them. Here is the final note. It is time for me to leave, not by the hand of another lesser being, but by my own free will. I no longer need this mortal shell that binds me to this world. This does not mean my time is up. No, it simply means I will no longer exist on this plane with a species that disgusts me and rots my mind. It has been an interesting experience, and I have no regrets. When we returned to the cell to look for more evidence, we were shocked by our discovery. Blood, enormous amounts of blood covered the walls. Not just splatter and blood smears, no, they were words. Words in thousands of languages, all carefully written and meticulously researched with maniacal obsession. Some were even identified as languages and words no one in the room knew. perhaps even the world. In the center of the room was a heart, presumably the deceased's. With the autopsy showing the only open wound was the hole in the chest. It is hypothesized the prisoner continued to bleed out and also lived long enough after the surgery to painstakingly write in what appeared to be hours of work. The last thing to be noted were the words written before the heart on the cell floor in large English print. "I am in control." Do you hear that? The reversed order. He wasn't recovering. He was transforming, or perhaps something was taking him over. Oh no, there's one more page I haven't read. My friend said that after that visit, they never went back to Fairfield Hills, and I understand why. We searched for the room where this incident might have happened, but many cells have deteriorated over time, making it impossible to distinguish. On the same trip, we found a letter a schizophrenic wrote to himself, but I suppose that will be a story for another time. A story for another time. I'm not sure I want to know more about that place. Did you notice? In the journal, he talks about a cellmate who died with a broken neck, but the doctor's report only mentions one corpse. So did the cellmate actually exist, or was his head all alone in that room? Or perhaps the cellmate is still there, still watching, still waiting. I think we should stop here tonight. I need a moment. See you later if you're still brave enough to listen. I'm Jeff, and you're listening to Late Night Horror Stories. The story I'm about to tell tonight. It's different from what I usually share. It comes from an anonymous listener who identifies himself as an adult now. He wants to tell about what happened when he was 12, about a man he met. A man who called himself the best psychologist in the world. I have to warn you, this story, it will make you look again at the people around your children, the people we trust. Listen carefully, and remember that sometimes the most dangerous people wear the friendliest masks. The best psychologist in the world. When I was 12, I came to the conclusion that everyone in the world, including my family, was against me. I was never a troubled kid, but my parents certainly treated me like one. For example, I had to be home by 5:00 p.m. every day. This obviously limited my playtime outdoors. I wasn't allowed to invite friends over, nor was I allowed to go to other people's houses. I had to do my homework immediately after getting home from school, no matter how long it took. My parents refused to buy me video games and made me read books and then write reports about them to prove I had actually read them. But while these rules were quite annoying to me as a child, they weren't what hurt me the most. What truly hurt me was my parents' lack of empathy. My mother was a bitter woman who always made me feel guilty about any accidents or mistakes I made. My father only knew one emotion: annoyance. The only times he spoke to me were when he was yelling at me for a bad test score or hitting me for, well. But enough about them, let's talk about my school psychologist. For his privacy, we'll call him Dr. Tanner. Like most middle schools, a psychologist was always available during school hours to support students who needed counseling, whether emotional, academic, social, behavioral, etc. To be honest, I never saw any students talking to Dr. Tanner. Every day I walked past his office on my way to the cafeteria and peered through the small window. He was always in there alone, working on papers. I guess most kids were too scared to talk about their problems with a near-stranger adult. For this reason, it took me 3 weeks to muster up enough courage to go into his office. May 1st, 1993, was the day I decided to confide my troubles to Dr. Tanner. During lunch break, I stood outside his office door and knocked. Through the window, I saw him lift his head, smile, and wave me in. I entered, and he greeted me by introducing himself and asking my name. Dr. Tanner was a soft-spoken man who exuded kindness. In less than 30 minutes, I poured out my heart to Dr. Tanner about how badly my parents treated me and how they didn't care about me at all. After a while, my voice started to tremble, and I stopped talking. The psychologist listened patiently to the entire story, arms crossed, nodding. I half expected him to start talking about how everything I had just said wasn't true and how much my parents loved me and blah blah blah. But he didn't. Dr. Tanner leaned towards me with a smile on his face and said, "You know what? I'm the best psychologist in the world. I promise we'll fix this." I rolled my eyes. "Okay, but how?" I asked. "I have my ways," he replied. "I'm a man of my word. I promise that within a month, your relationship with your parents will change for the better forever." After a short pause, he continued, However, I need you to promise me one thing. You must promise to come back to my office after school tomorrow and not tell anyone about our conversation today. It will be our little secret." I promised. The next day, I returned to see Dr. Tanner after school. It was about 4:00 p.m. when I entered his office. After a warm greeting, he told me to sit down at his desk again. As I sat down, I saw Dr. Tanner close the curtains on the small window. "All right," he smiled. "Now we have all the privacy we need." We began talking about my hobbies and interests, my favorite subjects in school, my least favorite teachers, and similar things. About an hour later, Dr. Tanner offered me a soda. I gladly accepted, as my parents never allowed me to drink soda. Dr. Tanner reached over to a mini fridge and rummaged around for a moment before placing 2 opened cans of soda on the desk. After that, we continued talking about my life. But not long after, I blacked out from the drugs Dr. Tanner had put in my drink. It took me about a minute to adjust my blurry vision when I woke up, and when I could see clearly, I didn't know what to think. I was handcuffed to a bed, and my mouth was taped shut. I immediately panicked, struggled, and pulled at the cuffs but soon gave up. My eyes widened in amazement after looking around the room. There were superhero posters on the walls and pictures of famous athletes on shelves. In the middle of the room was an old television and a Super Nintendo. Many game cartridges were stacked next to it. I didn't know what to think. Here I was, in a room full of things most kids would die to play with. I probably would have cried with joy if I hadn't been handcuffed to the bed frame. My stomach clenched as the door opened and Dr. Tanner walked in. He sat down on the edge of the bed. "Now listen," he said. "Remember that I'm here to help you and I would never hurt you, okay?" Dr. Tanner gently removed the tape from my mouth, then unlocked my handcuffs. My first instinct was to start crying, but something about Dr. Tanner made me feel safe. He smiled at me. "You'll be here for a while," he continued. "And during this time, you're allowed to play with any of the toys in the room when I'm home. But when I leave the house, I'll need to handcuff one of your hands to the bed. You can still watch TV, but I want you to only watch news channels when I'm gone." I sat in silence, still trying to process the information he was giving me. "All right," Dr. Tanner patted my knee. "Feel free to play. I'll be back when it's dinner time." He got up from the bed, walked across the room, and pressed the power button on the TV before locking the door behind him. A few more minutes passed before I realized Dr. Tanner wasn't kidding. All I could do was start up the Nintendo and play Mario until evening. Around 7:00 p.m., Dr. Tanner returned to the room, carrying 2 plates of mashed potatoes and chicken nuggets. I finally mustered up enough courage to ask him how long I would be in this room. "Oh, about a month," he replied. "Give or take a few weeks. I just have some things to take care of." The next morning, I woke up to Dr. Tanner's hand gently patting my head. "Hey, buddy, you don't have to wake up right now if you don't want to, but I need to put this back on," he whispered, cuffing the cold steel cuff onto my wrist. I looked up at him. He was wearing a collared shirt and slacks, his jacket draped over his shoulder and a briefcase by his side. He looked exactly as I had seen him around school. Before leaving, he placed the TV remote next to me and told me to turn it on to watch the news. The first thing I saw when I turned on the TV was a breaking news segment. An important-looking police officer stood at a podium surrounded by people holding microphones. I started watching mid-speech. "A statewide Amber Alert has been issued this morning. We have multiple investigators working to identify a potential kidnapper, but currently, there is not much evidence. Officials state the boy was last seen around 4 or 5 p.m. on." I started to feel nauseous as a photo of me appeared on the screen. It was my yearbook photo from last year. The caption below the photo displayed my name and age, school, and town. Above my photo were alternating headlines: "FBI begins search for child," and "Kidnapping suspect at large and possibility of running away from home." The live footage continued, and 2 people I soon recognized as my parents stepped up to the podium. Both had red eyes, tears streaming down my mother's face as she held the microphone. I had never seen so much emotion come from my mother as she cried on live television, stammering phrases like, "Please bring my son back," and "Mommy's sorry," and "Please come home to mommy." When my father held the microphone, I almost expected his demeanor to be stone cold. But he too had tears in his eyes. He pleaded with the world to bring his son home safely and finally apologized to me. "Son, I know I haven't been the best father, but damn it, I wish I had been a good father. Please bring my son home." I turned off the TV shortly after. My emotions were mixed because I had never seen my father cry. I felt terrible that my parents were going through so much, but at the same time, I felt relieved. Now I knew how much my parents loved me. Nearly 4 weeks passed, and Dr. Tanner treated me with the utmost respect. He would leave in the mornings, cuffing me to the bed frame, but would return in the afternoons to eat lunch and dinner with me, talking and playing games. I never would have guessed Dr. Tanner was so good at Monopoly and Scrabble. But one morning when Dr. Tanner woke me up before work, I noticed a grim expression on his face. I also noticed it was 3 hours earlier than when he usually woke me up. "You need to watch the news today. No exceptions. I want you to keep the TV on all day and pay close attention," he said grimly. I, of course, complied and watched him leave the room. About 2 hours later, a breaking news segment interrupted the toothpaste commercial I was watching. The headline read, "Human Remains Found." Two grim-looking men in suits stood side by side and began to speak. "We are saddened to report this morning's somber news regarding the missing child case from earlier this month." One of the men bowed his head while the speaker shuffled through some papers. He continued, "The remains of a body have been found in a trash bag beneath a highway overpass. The body appears to be that of a child. Although not much remains, the body was decapitated and largely burned to ash and bone." The screen switched to helicopter footage of the highway. Dozens of police cars were gathered near the bottom of the tall overpass. The man's voice could still be heard. In the bag, police found a middle school ID card labeled as follows. The screen displayed the school ID card I always kept in my backpack. The plastic was slightly melted, but my photo and name were intact. After the two men disbanded themselves, the camera cut to my parents. They were sitting amidst reporters. My mother's face was contorted in pain, and my father's head was buried in his knees. I turned off the TV. Dr. Tanner came home very late. He rushed into the room, unlocked my handcuffs, and placed a bottle of sparkling water in my hand. He placed his hand on my shoulder and smiled. "I promised you, didn't I?" I nodded, tears welling up in my eyes. "You need to promise me again," he whispered. He told me I needed to drink all the water in the bottle. It would help me sleep. And from now on, I was never to tell anyone I had ever met him. I promised. "I told you I was the best psychologist in the world, didn't I?" And he was right. I woke up later that night to find myself lying in the middle of a park, the stars blazing brightly in the night sky. I recognized the park. It wasn't far from school. About a mile down the road, I saw my house. The lights were off inside, but I could see my dad sitting on the steps leading to the front door. I hesitated to call out to him. He slowly lifted his head, but when he saw it was me, he jumped up, ran towards me with open arms, yelling my name. My mom rushed out of the house behind him. Dr. Tanner was right. Everything had changed with my family. My parents laughed more and treated me affectionately. I couldn't have asked for a more perfect ending. Occasionally, I see Dr. Tanner on campus, coming and going from his office. Rarely do we make eye contact, let alone speak to each other. But sometimes he'll wink and smile at me. I will always keep my promise to him and pretend I've never met him, but there will always be one question forever lingering in my mind. Who did Dr. Tanner decapitate and throw under the overpass? This story, it makes me think about what we consider good and evil, about those who claim to be helpers. Dr. Tanner, he gave the boy what he wanted, his parents' love. But at what cost? Who had to pay that price? And the scariest thing, the writer of this letter still appreciates him. After all these years, still keeping the secret, still protecting the one who did unimaginable things. How many Dr. Tanners are out there? How many wear the mask of kindness, waiting for the next child who needs help? Hold your little family tight tonight. And remember, sometimes family pain is better than encountering someone who promises to erase it. The storm is getting closer. I think we should stop here, but I'll be back with more stories from the shadows out there. Until then, beware of those who claim to be the best in the world. Welcome back. I'm Jeff, and you're still listening to late night horror stories on my channel. Do you ever have a strange fear, like being afraid of something others find normal? I know someone like that. He hasn't taken a shower in 21 years, not because he's unclean. He still takes baths, but a closed shower stall with a curtain, it evokes a horror he can't forget. Last week he sent me his story, and after reading it, I understand why he's afraid. The shower. Ladies and gentlemen, I have nightmares where I'm trapped in a shower stall. The drain is clogged and water endlessly pours down on me. The water rises to my ankles, then my waist, then over my head. The shower curtain turns into glass and my screams become gurgles. A dark figure presses its face against the glass on the other side and it watches me. I beg, but it won't let me out. I swallow water and thrash helplessly in my glass coffin. I wake up choking. I know where the nightmare comes from. I don't need to dig deep. That incident is never far from my subconscious. Finding it is easy, overcoming it is not. It was the summer I was 12 when the Hudson family moved in across the street. 3 of them, one of whom was a very old woman. She was small and frail, almost skin and bones. Her white hair was thin and wispy, her faded blue floral dress, her head hung limply from her neck and wobbled as the man pushed her up the makeshift wheelchair ramp into the house. At the time, I couldn't tell if she was alive or dead. A few minutes later, she appeared at the upstairs window, sitting in her wheelchair. She was directly opposite my bedroom, and I cautiously peeked from behind my curtains. Her head was now upright, and she stared at me. Just stared, not moving her head an inch. I closed the curtains. For many days, she sat at the window. She watched cars drive by on the suburban street and watched the neighborhood kids play in their yards. I never saw anyone else in the room, never saw her leave her wheelchair. At night, I would often peek through the gap in the curtains. Her shadow was still at that window, lights off, looking out into the darkness into my bedroom. I couldn't tell, but I knew she was watching me. Stories about her quickly circulated among the neighborhood kids, that she was a witch, that she was just a doll, that she was actually dead. But I knew she wasn't dead. I'm sure I never saw her move from that window once, nor did I ever see her head turn, but I felt her eyes move as she watched me. I could feel her watching me. Alone in my bedroom, in the middle of the night with the curtains drawn, I woke up with a shiver. Her eyes were following me. I was sure of it. I started sleeping on the floor. As low as possible. Maybe she couldn't see me if I was on the floor. I told my parents that the old lady across the street scared me. I begged them to talk to the Hudson family and ask them to move her to a room without a window. They laughed and told me to let her live out her final years in peace. She was just watching the street, they said, and that probably made her feel happy and younger. Are you going to lock me in a windowless room when I'm old and in a wheelchair? My mom laughed. Remind me to move in with your sister when I'm in a wheelchair, okay. A week later, there was a commotion at the Hudson house. I watched from my bedroom window as the man ran out of the house and opened the back car door, then he ran inside and reappeared a few minutes later, pushing the old lady in her wheelchair down the ramp. She looked sicker than before. She couldn't have weighed more than 30 kilograms. Her head was tilted to the right, resting on her shoulder. Her body swayed in the wheelchair, but her eyes never left me, watching me the entire time. The man lifted her and placed her in the car. He folded the wheelchair and put it in the trunk. He quickly jumped into the driver's seat. The young woman jumped into the passenger seat, and the man pressed the gas. The old lady's floppy head was still facing me. It bobbed up and down as the van backed down the driveway. I watched her face. It was expressionless, devoid of emotion. Her tongue was slightly protruding from the right side of her mouth, but her eyes were fixed on mine, and they didn't waver. The van sped down the street and disappeared. My parents heard the news that afternoon from other neighbors. The old lady's condition was worsening, and the Hudson family had taken her to some nursing home. She wouldn't be back. I went straight up to my bedroom and looked across the street. I smiled. Her window was finally empty. The Hudson family didn't return the next day. No van. That night I looked out the old lady's window. No one was there, no wheelchair, but the bedroom light was still on. I remember telling my dad I thought it was strange, and he just shrugged, saying, probably a timer or something. I woke up in the middle of the night and cautiously looked out my bedroom window. That bedroom light was still on. It suddenly turned off, and I ducked down below the window frame. I slowly poked my head up and looked out, hoping to see the shadow of that frail, tiny creature. I watched for 10 minutes, straining my eyes as the light quickly flickered on and off again. I slept on the floor again, hugging my pillow tightly. I had late baseball practice the next day. When I got home, the house was empty. My parents were at my sister's softball game. I went to take a shower. About 3 minutes into my shower, I felt cold. The hot steam was somehow escaping the shower stall. This made no sense because I had closed the door. I wiped the shampoo from my eyes, turned my head, and heard a strange sound that would haunt my nightmares for years. The metallic clinking of the shower curtain rings slowly being pulled across the rod. Someone was slowly opening the curtain. The shampoo stung my eyes, and through the burning I saw a dark figure behind the curtain. Long, pale, bony fingers grasped the curtain as it slowly opened. I instinctively backed away in the shower, and the curtain opened completely. The old lady stood there. I'm sure I only looked at her for 1, maybe 2 seconds, but in that moment, time seemed to stop. After all these years, I can still paint you a vivid picture of the horrifying image before me. White hair disheveled, madness in her eyes, bones protruding under taut skin, completely naked. Her skin was mottled, warts all over her body, her thin breasts sagged to her waist. Hair grew in places I didn't know people could grow hair. She smiled grotesquely, and I felt the shower tiles behind me and the hot water hitting my face. In her other hand, the old lady held a letter opener. "August," she mumbled. "August, August, August." I lunged past her, pushing her tiny body to the floor. I ran downstairs, naked and soaking wet. In my panic, I somehow remembered I was naked and grabbed a pair of shorts from the dirty laundry basket in the laundry room, spilling the basket onto the floor. I ran full speed down the street, finally reaching my friend's house. When the police arrived, they found the old lady slumped in a heap in the bathroom. The shower was still running. The police officers were all very kind to me, commending me for my bravery. I told them what she had said to me, "August," and asked if they knew what she meant. "It's almost August in a few days," one shrugged. "And you can never fully understand old and crazy people, son." The Hudson family only came to our street one more time to retrieve their belongings. A "for sale" sign was planted for a few days. My mom said they couldn't face the neighbors after what had happened. Apparently, they had taken the old lady, the man's mother, to a specialized institution in the southern part of the state. Somehow, she had escaped the institution and taken a bus back to our town. That never made sense to me. She was too old, too weak, too helpless. She could barely move the weeks she lived in that house. How could she have traveled hundreds of miles on her own? Anyway, you can imagine how this affected me. I haven't taken a shower in 21 years. I take baths, which I suppose isn't all that different. Still a tub, and it involves hot soapy water. But a shower with the curtain closed, the water falling to the tub floor and steam rising up the walls. You get lost in your own thoughts in the shower, thoughts consume you, and it feels so safe. For a few minutes, you're detached from the world. It's your own private, foggy kingdom. But that's what makes a shower stall dangerous. You're enclosed, vulnerable, naked, you're exposed. I've talked to people about it, my parents, a psychiatrist. But mostly I try to push the incident deep into places I can't find. I haven't spoken about it to anyone since I was a child. Life moves on. Aside from taking baths, I'm pretty normal. A few months ago, something inside me changed. I felt an urge to revisit the incident, almost like a voice in my head telling me to. My head wanted closure. I spent hours online one night trying to find information about the Hudson family and the old lady. Finally, I found what I was looking for, an obituary for the old lady. She had died 4 years ago. Somehow, that living corpse hadn't died for another 15 years. The obituary featured a black and white photo from when she was young. It was a picture of her and her deceased husband on their wedding day. His name was August, and he looked exactly like me. I closed my browser and stared at the computer screen for 10 minutes. Finally, everything made more sense. Why did she call me August? Why was she obsessed with watching me? Perhaps she used to write letters to her husband, and that's why she had the letter opener that night. For a small moment, I felt a little better. Things always feel better when they make sense. "Honey, is everything okay?" That was my wife. "I think so," I said. I took my first shower in years that night. I didn't even flinch when the sound of the curtain rings slid across the rod and my wife walked in. But as she embraced me under the hot water, one question wouldn't leave my head. Why did the young woman in that wedding photo look exactly like my wife? Karma, retribution. Souls bound to repeat the same tragic play over and over again. The writer of this letter, he thought he had escaped his past. But perhaps we never truly escape. Perhaps we only forget for a while until the wheel of fate turns back around. I wonder where that old lady or her spirit is right now. Who is she watching? What is she waiting for? And that other man, August, does he know he's back? Does he remember the old love who is looking for him? You know, sometimes I look in the mirror and wonder if this face is mine, or someone else's from long, long ago. It's almost dawn, but I still have a few more stories to share if you're still brave enough to listen. The next story is about milk and cookies. Sounds innocent, doesn't it? But wait until you find out who's receiving them and where. Welcome back, listeners. I'm Jeff. This next story wasn't actually sent in by a listener. I heard it from a convenience store clerk, a young man who works the night shift in the city's outskirts. He told me about a strange old man and the night he followed him to a junkyard. This isn't just a ghost story, it's a story about a promise, about friendship, and about what we owe the departed. Listen carefully. Milk and cookies. This isn't really my story. It was recounted to me by an old man who frequented the convenience store where I worked. When I recall the night I followed him to the junkyard, the hairs on my neck still stand on end, and my skin gets goosebumps, unrelated to the temperature. I worked in a pretty quiet area of the city, on the edge of the suburbs, and we had little to worry about crime. The job didn't pay much, but the meager amount I earned helped pay some of my tuition bills, and the sparse nighttime clientele gave me more than enough time to read or browse the internet. You think we don't notice everyone when we're behind the counter? We do, we just don't care. Mostly. We can tell when to check ID or the almost greasy, longing look of a teenager buying condoms at 11:00 p.m. Then there was the old man. He showed up every Friday, like clockwork. He wore a flannel shirt with sleeves rolled up, washed too many times, and counted out change with the reluctance of a frugal man. He was historic, always a warm greeting and a thank you after leaving with his purchase. He was hunched with age, but there was steel in that spine, I could tell. And he always bought the same thing, a small carton of milk and a small paper bag of cookies. A strange thing for an old man. A loving grandfather, perhaps, but I never saw him enter the store with anyone else. This sparked my curiosity. Boredom has a way of amplifying the unusual. Over long evenings, I counted cracks in the ceiling, arranged merchandise in strange geometric shapes, saw patterns in the repeating squares of the linoleum floor. This strange old man baffled me. Milk and cookies, a treat for children but bought late at night. Was he reliving a forgotten childhood while enjoying these delicacies? A dark paranoia reared its head. Perhaps the old man was one of those psychopathic perverts, kidnapping young girls and keeping them in his basement. Week after week, we exchanged polite greetings, exchanged goods for cash. I couldn't unravel the mystery. I couldn't read it in his cloudy eyes, his trembling hands, or his slow gait. I couldn't stand the strangeness. I decided to follow him. It took me a few weeks to plan. I'd peek out, watch him walk down the street to the first bend. Then I'd lock the front door and follow him to the next bend. And so it went. One day, right after he made his purchase, I acted quickly, locking the door. I followed him from a distance, never too close, never more than a block away. There was a sense of taboo in what I was doing, a bit like being a child and doing something mischievous. He didn't suspect a thing. The streetlights cast long, twisting shadows for both of us as I trailed him through the dark streets. He found his destination at an old junkyard, a literal dump. The rusty chain fell to the ground after he gave it a gentle tug. There was nothing worth stealing here, so it seemed. The old man walked in confidently, and I had to hurry to catch up. I quickly lost him in that labyrinth, wandering through society's discarded waste. The lights and sounds of the city faded into the distant. A sliver of a crescent moon in the sky cast a strange silver glow on everything. Panic was there, just a heartbeat away. In that strange, eerie landscape, I almost gave up hope when I finally stumbled upon a small clearing. My target sat there on the ground, his yellow teeth bared in a strained smile. "Took you long enough to catch up, didn't it?" he said. I stopped abruptly. I had nothing to say. "Come here, boy, there's nothing to be afraid of here. I figured something had piqued your interest. That's why you followed me here. You won't get in trouble for this, will you? The store owner trusts me. She knows I don't steal, and I'm allowed to close early if business is slow. Slow enough for you to spend half the night playing spy games, hunting an old man like me." He laughed, a series of dry breaths escaping into a cough. "I'm here," he said, pressing his forearms onto his bony knees to stand up, "to keep a promise, a very specific promise. I come here every week because it's all I have left. There's not much left in this world for me, no wife, no job, but a man has to keep his word. If he doesn't even have that little bit, then he's not a man anymore, is he?" I had to nod for him to continue. He pointed to something behind him, moving aside so I could see. A pair of faded doors protruded from the pile of junk, looking like the entrance to an ancient crypt. The old man pulled one door open. The creak of hinges echoed through the still air. Even from a distance, I recognized the thickness of that door. I quickly closed the distance between us. The man placed the milk and cookies beyond the threshold and closed the door. He extended his hand, shaking mine in greeting, introducing himself as Miller. He didn't say if it was his last name or first. "Inside the cold truck," he said, tapping the door. The dull thump reminded me again of the thickness of the walls. "I suppose you're curious why I'm here every week. It's a long story, and I haven't told many people. I'm old, not many years left. My bones ache when it rains, and every day they hurt more. Guess it's worth telling." His voice seemed to gain strength, a rich baritone instead of the weak, cracked sound from before. "This goes way back before World War II. I didn't serve, of course. Too young then, I must have been 9 or 10. We didn't have fancy new toys and computers." He pronounced the word slowly, his jaw working around the syllables, "that you kids have these days. Back then, we played wherever we could. Cowboys and Indians, cops and robbers. No TV, that was for the rich folks. This yard has been here longer than I have. We had forts on the junk hills, played soldiers, all the things kids should do. That day was hide and seek, an old game but great for a place like this. I wasn't a big kid, didn't win most of the games we played, but I was going to win this one. I had seen this big refrigerator before, right at the edge of the yard back then, and I knew exactly where I was going to hide. I was small. Yeah, but I was fast. May not look like it now. But I got away from them even before they counted to 20. Didn't want anyone else hiding in there with me. It was dark and cool in there too. Before I closed the door, I could see some had made their way into the truck over time. The last thing I remember was seeing a sliver of daylight before pulling this door shut. I could see his hands start to tremble as he recalled the old fear. He clenched his fists to stop the shaking, and when his fists began to tremble too, he stuffed his hands into his pockets. It took me a while to realize the game was over. I had been in the dark for too long, too long. I threw my entire weight against the door. I banged on the walls until my hands bled. I screamed until my throat hurt. His Adam's apple bobbed up and down as he swallowed with the memory. Then I sat and waited. I'm sure I slept. How do you know you're asleep when you're completely alone in the dark? You can't, boy, you can't. I was thirsty first, then hungry. That's the only way I knew time was passing. I felt hope fade like the setting sun. I screamed in that dark place. I called out to God, but he didn't answer. I even called out to Satan if I dared. I cried. Hours in the dark I cried, the sound echoing off the thick walls, until the air was filled with the sound of tears and sobs. I thought I was going to die. Have you ever been close to death, boy? No, sir, I shook my head. He stared into my eyes, his almost clouded eyes suddenly sharper. No, you haven't, I can tell. Once a man has looked death in the eye, he's never the same afterward. At first, I thought it was an auditory hallucination, but I swore someone else was crying in there with me, sounding a little higher pitched, a little more distant than my own voice. There it is, I told myself. I've been in the dark so long I'm going crazy. I counted to 5 and held my breath, and the crying still continued. I was mesmerized. The man was looking at me, but not at me. His dreamy, half-closed focus told me he was seeing something else, something far away. I called out in the dark. At first, there was no answer but quiet sobs. It was another child, but not a boy, a little girl. There was enough light before I closed the door to know I was alone in there. I panicked the second before, but now I felt the fear dissipate. The crying started again. I retreated into the corner by the door. Have you ever seen a mouse in a cage trap when it tries to get away from you? Yeah, like that. The crying didn't get any closer. I figured I was going to die in there anyway. No one was coming to save me, so I called out again. The crying stopped. In that dark place, the little girl replied. She sounded about my age. She said her name was Helen, a beautiful name. Even then, she had been trapped in the dark for a very long time. She tried calling for help once, but no one came. She was very hungry, then not hungry anymore. She had given up calling for help, seeing her family again, making more friends. The walls, she said, were too thick for any sound to escape, and no one knew I was in there. No one would find her. A good thing, at least she wouldn't be alone anymore because she had me. I heard her moving in the dark, and she took my hand. Her hand was small and cold, like she'd been in a freezer for a few minutes. But it was all I had, and I held on with all my strength. I dreamt there were voices outside calling my name. I wasn't sure about it until I pressed my ear against the corner of the door. The lining must have rotted away with age because I could still hear something from outside. If I could hear them, maybe they could hear me. I tried to scream. All that came out was a hoarse croak. I had gone too long without water. I tried to moisten my tongue with saliva, but also failed. I banged on the door with my free hand. The lack of food and water had weakened me. I wasn't sure they could hear anything from me. Hope died there a second time. That dark box would be the last thing I ever saw, and no one would know. I felt Helen's small hand tighten around mine. Don't go, she said. It'll be fun if you stay. I've been alone for too long. She started pulling me back into the depths of that dark place. I couldn't resist her. She was too strong. Please, I whispered to her. My parents will miss me. I still have friends outside. Even with her tiny fingernails drawing blood from my hand, I could feel her sadness through that slightest contact. I don't have friends anymore. Her crying started again, softly in that space, so sad it seemed her heart would break from it. I can be your friend, I offered. I promise I'll be your friend forever. I told her, and I meant it. I saw his hand clench in his pocket, recalling that haunted memory. She let go, or perhaps she was never there. I touched my cheek, and it was still cold. Right then, I heard the door open. I had been found. Strong hands lifted me out of the darkness. The light hurt my eyes, and it took a moment before I could see my rescuer. Someone brought water. I gulped it down. It was the best thing I had ever tasted. No water has tasted the same since. It tasted like life. You know, they called my parents while I sat there with the big man who had found me. He squinted, sizing me up, saying I was bigger than he thought. His voice sounded much higher pitched, almost like a girl's voice. He patted my head with a big, rough hand. No shame in crying in there, boy, he said. If I were stuck in there, I'd be scared too. My parents came to see me, brought by the police. They hugged me tightly. We were about to leave when I asked if they had found the girl in there with me. The rescuers looked confused. I was the only one in the cold truck. I refused to leave until they checked again. I made such a fuss that they exchanged exasperated glances and led me back to the massive doors. They opened wide. No girl came out. The light didn't reach all the way to the back. A police officer took out a flashlight. One of those big silver ones. You don't see them anymore? Only on the second sweep of that unnatural cavern did we see the bright blue of a girl's dress. He sighed deeply. The story is almost over. He suddenly looked very frail, as if the telling had drained all life from him. She had been dead for years, of course, dry as one of those mummies from National Geographic. I thought I was a little crazy when I saw her. I don't know what I said, but no one believed me. Too long in the dark, they said, makes a boy crazy. But I never stopped believing, and I never forgot my promise. 70 years later, what happened between us is just for me, and I alone know. I can't always come here, but I've done my best, more than some men can say. He leaned against the door, out of breath after sharing. He stood upright and cleared his throat, his voice still clear. Good night, my friend. I'll see you next week. His voice was suddenly clear and resonated through the junkyard. I half opened my mouth to say goodbye to him before realizing his eyes weren't looking at me. No, they were focused on the door instead. He slowly walked across the clearing. Sir, you forgot your milk and cookies, I called after him, now on the other side of the clearing. He looked back, and again I could tell he wasn't looking at me, but at the door I was leaning against. No, boy, I didn't forget. Have a good evening, and I'll see you next week. A strange encounter. I thought the discomfort I felt with the story vanished from me. A simple campfire story, nothing more, just an old man, perhaps suffering from dementia, reliving a half-imagined childhood fantasy. I sighed. The moon was high overhead. I suppose there are worse ways to spend an evening. One thing bothered me just before I turned away from that silent place. For the second time that evening, the refrigerator door was pulled open. An ancient breath of air escaped. I half expected to see Helen's bones still lying there after all these years. There was nothing there. I blamed myself for childish fear. I gave a forced laugh. There was nothing in the empty crypt of the cold truck but an empty milk carton and a pile of cookie crumbs. Do you see? Not all ghost stories are about horror. Sometimes they're about friendship, about loyalty, about sacred promises we keep to the departed. Old Man Miller, was he crazy? Perhaps, but he was also a man of his word. And Helen, whether she was truly there or not, she was no longer alone. I wonder how many souls are out there waiting, not to harm, not to seek revenge, but just waiting for someone to remember them. Waiting for a friend. It's almost dawn, but before we part ways, I have one more story. A story about tree climbers and the price of happiness. Brace yourselves. This final story, it will change the way you look at happiness forever. It's midnight, the sky is turning from black to gray. I'm Jeff, and this is the last story for tonight, or rather, this morning. Have you ever seen someone who's strangely happy? The kind of smile that never fades, the kind of cheerfulness that makes you uncomfortable. This last story was sent in by a young man. He wrote that he found true happiness, but the way he describes it, I'm not sure if it's happiness or something else entirely. The Tree Climbers. To the show. A few months ago, I was cycling home from work. It was a particularly tiring Friday night at one of the town's most popular bars. I wasn't a bartender, just a barback. But the crowd was especially rowdy and left me exhausted for the 5-mile bike ride home at 3:00 a.m. As I approached my house, I slowed down and made a wide left turn onto my street. As I straightened up, I noticed a tree under the streetlight. It wasn't a tree I recognized. Although I think most trees aren't easily recognizable, this one particularly caught my eye because sitting right at the V between the trunk and a branch was a man, his hands gripping the trunk on either side. He smiled lazily at me as he swung his legs back and forth, tapping his heels against the tree. I wondered what he was doing sitting in a tree so late, but I cycled straight past as he smiled at me. I went home and chained my bike to the porch, went upstairs to my room, and collapsed onto my bed. I fell asleep immediately. I'm a naturally bad sleeper, so I wasn't surprised when I woke up an hour later. I noticed the curtains swaying in the moonlight. Wind from outside blew through the open window. I didn't remember leaving the window open before work, but decided to close it to keep insects out. I recoiled, startled, as I grasped the top of the window to close it. The man was sitting in the tree about 10 meters from my window, directly opposite me, smiling. The strangest thing, I don't have a tree in my yard. I rubbed my eyes and opened them again to look out the window. I had a clear view of the house across the street. No tree obscured it. I've had hallucinations from sleeping pills before, but I was too tired that night to take them. Maybe it was still affecting me from a long time ago. I stood for a while until my heart slowed down, then went back to bed. A few weeks passed and I didn't see the man or the tree again. I completely forgot about him, dismissing it as another hallucination from sleeping pills. Until one night, I returned to my window to draw the curtains before bed, and I saw him again. I screamed when I saw him, sitting right in the small V as before, smiling at me. I rubbed my eyes again, but neither he nor the tree disappeared like last time. I sat breathing, trying to calm down, but I couldn't take my eyes off him. He just sat there with that damn smile on his face. He looked much thinner than when I last saw him. His cheekbones protruded as if he hadn't eaten for weeks. That's when he waved at me. I opened the window. "Do I know you?" He stopped waving and nodded, smiling at me the whole time. "How do I know you?" He gestured for me to come closer, his smile widening slightly. I was determined to find out who he was, so I closed the window and went outside. I walked to the base of the tree and looked up. He was looking down at me, smiling and waving me up. "Just tell me who you are." He just kept waving me up. Damn it. I grabbed the lowest branch and started climbing. He was about 6 meters up, and I'm not a climber. When I was halfway up, he stood up in the V and turned to climb higher in the tree. "Wait!" He disappeared into the branches, a few leaves falling towards me. I finally reached the V a few minutes later and stood up, looking up for him. After a few minutes of searching and yelling, nothing stirred from above. I couldn't see anything but leaves and branches. The nearest branch was almost 5 meters further up the tree. Tired and confused, I sat down in the V. Who was that? I sat confused for a few more minutes, occasionally looking up, trying to find him. Nothing. I considered climbing down and going to bed, giving up. But it felt pretty good up here. The wind blew gently, cooling me after the climb. I looked down and smiled. After months of stress and life, I finally felt relaxed. Before I knew it, I could feel the warm rays of the sun falling on my face. It felt amazing. Jake, one of my best friends, drove into my driveway and saw me sitting in the tree. He got out of his car and yelled at me, "What the hell are you doing up there? And since when did you have such a big tree?" I smiled at him, feeling no need to answer. It was peaceful up here. He walked to the base of the tree and looked up at me. I just smiled back. "Get down, man, the game's about to start." The game? I wasn't interested in watching sports. I preferred being up here. After a few minutes, he yelled at me. He finally gave up, got in his car, and drove away. I smiled as I watched him drive off. Silence. I ended up staying up there for a few weeks. It's funny. I didn't even feel hungry anymore. Being in this tree was the happiest I had ever felt. Jake came back occasionally, trying to get me down, but always ended up driving off frustrated. I wished he could feel how happy I was up here. So the next time I saw him, I waved him up. "Hey man, you've been up there for weeks. You look like you haven't eaten anything." He was right. I hadn't eaten anything since I climbed up. I didn't care. I wasn't hungry. I waved him up again. "Stop smiling, man, you're scaring me." I waved him up again, swinging my legs. He was a good friend, and good friends make each other happy. "Oh, for crying out loud," he said and started climbing. Finally, he could be as happy as me. That's when I heard a sound from above. breaking branches and rustling leaves. I looked up and saw the man from weeks ago reaching down to me, waving me up. His skin was stretched taut over his bones, his eyes bulging from their sockets. He had lost some of his hair, and the rest clung to his forehead. His fingers looked like pure bone, and his fingernails had grown even longer. And his smile, he looked so happy. His lips curled back so far I could see all his teeth. And in that moment, with all my heart, I wanted to be as happy as him. I stood up and climbed the tree, embracing it as I made my way up, smiling in anticipation. When I finally reached the top, he was gone, but I didn't care. I was so happy to be up here. I was even happier than when I was sitting below. I looked back at Jake, who had just reached the V. He was yelling at me. A few times he looked straight at me, but I could tell he couldn't see me. After a few minutes of yelling, he sat down, placing a hand on each side of the V. He smiled. Happiness? Or is it an infection, a disease in the form of joy? The writer of this letter, is he still in that tree? Still smiling, still waiting for someone else to climb up. I look outside and see trees everywhere, ones I'd never noticed before, and I wonder how many people are sitting up there in the dark, smiling down at us. You know, the scariest thing? It's not that they've lost their minds, it's that they genuinely feel happy. Happy enough to give up all food, water, life itself, just to hold on to that feeling. It's morning now, the light is chasing away the darkness. But these stories, they will stay with you. In your dreams, in quiet moments, in the laughter of strangers on the street. This is Jeff. Thank you for staying with me through this long night, through the stories from the dark. And remember, if you see someone sitting in a tree, smiling and waving, don't climb up, no matter how happy they seem.